He's a CEO, got money to buy the whole game, but he's plain broke out of pure pride. The old man wants to prove he can reach the top without spending a single dime, just grinding. The result? Everyone calls him a boomer, he gets scammed, nearly dies multiple times, and ends up babysitting a crazy little lizard. Still, he builds a party with a random healer and a hot blonde elf who's clearly trying to scam him. And the worst part? He kinda knows, but plays along cause, well, she's hot. Now he's out to shut everyone up and become one of the top rankers, completely free to play. A mug of beer appears as a curious voice asks if the other has heard the latest news. In the busy tavern where people were talking about Kim Chun-shik, CEO of Novus World, a smiling elf was serving beers. Wearing aviator sunglasses, a young man comments that Kim promised to be #1, while his friend expresses doubt. Another customer questions whether Chun-shik even plays, and his companion laughs, thinking it odd for an old man to be in that kind of game. With a slight discomfort in his ear, the protagonist wonders why it's so sensitive. Suspicious, he turns to his partner, wanting to know if they were talking bad about him, but she replies it's just his imagination. With a discreet gesture, Kim Chun-shik brings a finger to his chin as if pondering the situation. With a sigh, he swallows dryly before changing the subject. Curious, he asks why the game feels so real, and his partner replies it's because of the VR. Calmly explaining, Kim's partner says that R/and M system simulates everything, even pain, so he needs to be careful. Taking a sip, the hero comments that it's still just a game and that drinking for real is better, wondering why young people enjoy this so much. With his mug raised, Chun-shik shouts out after drinking. Right after, he calls the bartender and orders another round. Confused, he asks Secretary John where they had left off, and she promptly starts explaining what he needs to do. Showing a scroll, John details that he needs to reach the max level and accumulate karma points to become a ranker. With no patience for so much complication, he regrets the promise he made publicly, just wishing he could go out and hunt, while a blonde elf watches him. Thinking of quitting, he hears Jung's warning about the company's image. They both turn their heads upon hearing a laugh followed by a comment doubting the seriousness of the conversation. At another table, a man in red armor boasts that he would easily defeat that bastard. With an uncomfortable look, Secretary John comments that the place is very noisy. Suggesting a change of environment, Jung is interrupted by Chun-shik, who turns around irritated, wanting to know what all the fuss is about. Reprimanding the noisy youngsters, the protagonist criticizes the lack of etiquette in public places. Poking the knight in red armor, Kim Chun-shik claims their parents failed in raising them. The provocation angers the knight, who reacts by asking if Kim wants to die and why he's picking a fight. Criticizing the rude way of speaking, Chun-shik calls the other a disrespectful brat. Indignant, he asks if all young people are that disrespectful, reminding that in his time, people said yes to their elders. With a sigh, he starts talking to the Red Knight, who stares back at him without flinching. The knight's masked companion interrupts, calling Chun-shik a boomer and a newbie and provocative tone. Shocked to hear the term boomer, the protagonist faces the masked one's death threat if he keeps acting that way. In response, Chun-shik demands to know if they have any idea who he is, but Jong steps in and apologizes for his behavior. Not understanding, the masked man asks what that's supposed to mean now. Jong explains that the protagonist is just old-fashioned and thinks he's right, asking them to be patient. Kim Chun-shik's partner tries to avoid conflict, telling the ranker it's not worth it to fight a nudie. With a glint in his eye, the masked man threatens them, saying they better leave if they don't want to die. Furious, Kim Chun-shik shouts that people need to learn how to behave in public, while John tries to calm him down. The knight in red armor asks if the masked one will let them leave, but gets a wait in response. With a dark look, the masked one comments that he thought of a way to screw them over. The scene shifts, and the protagonist compares that world to the real one, saying both are full of brats. With clenched fists, he wishes to become stronger so he can teach those punks a lesson, asking John what she thinks about it. Serious and with a dark aura, John calls him Mr. CEO, and he wants to know what's wrong. She advises him not to go around saying he's the company's CEO, and he asks why. John explains that just the fact he started playing is already too much of a topic, and revealing the character could ruin his plans. She goes on saying that soon everyone will be after him, while the protagonist imagines shadowy figures. Unbothered, our hero replies that doesn't worry him. With confidence, Kim Chun-shik declares that he just has to get strong and beat his enemies, but Jong says he'll probably quit before that. Holding the scroll in his hands, he asks if all he needs to do is defeat that thing, and Jong confirms it's a quest monster with a good reward. In front of the wanted poster of the wandering dark wolf, he asks where the creature is. According to Jong, it should be around, and they find the wolf already dead, with red smoke rising from its body. Observing the X mark on the creature's face, Chun-shik suspects it might already be dead. Concluding that someone killed it just moments ago, Jong hears the hero's doubt about what to do now. Without warning, she freezes due to something unexpected. A red energy hits Jong, and she says with a shiver that she has a bad feeling something is wrong. The masked man and the red knight appear, and the masked one comments that he expected more from her, but she was nothing. Recognizing the masked man from the tavern, Kim Chun-shik calls him a disrespectful brat. Getting closer, the masked man says the protagonist doesn't understand the situation and that he couldn't let it slide as Jong disappears. In disbelief, our hero stares into the void, asking if Secretary Jong died. The masked man glares at Chun-shik, saying he looked like a dumbass since the tavern and asking who he thinks he's schooling. Yelling in anger, the protagonist asks if they killed someone just over that, saying it's a crime. Threatening to call the police, he says he'll throw them in jail as the Red Knight prepares to attack. With a violent strike, the knight in red armor lands a direct hit on Chun-shik. Blood pours from his mouth, and he's shocked by how real the pain feels. Laughing at his reaction, the Red Knight enjoys the suffering, and the masked man says beating him up is going to be fun. Remembering the newbie buff, the masked man states that Chun-shik can't die in PvP and shouldn't act like a coward. Offended, Chun-shik curses the two brats and demands respect for elders. Mocking him, the Red Knight makes fun of Kim's boomer attitude and says he wants to see how long he can last. With a shout, the Red Knight delivers a brutal blow. Continuing with axe in hand, he attacks repeatedly and screams for his death. After stopping the attack, he comments that that was 3 hits. Protected by the newbie's blessing, Kim complains about the lack of respect and says hitting an adult is too much. Stepping forward, the masked man pushes the Red Knight aside and demands space. Grabbing Chun-shik by the hair, he asks if the hero wants to know something, while the other tells the brat to let go. Ignoring the protagonist's identity, the masked man says that doesn't matter, scaring the hero even more. With blood splattering, Chun-shik screams as the masked one adds that the only thing that matters is that he's just a newbie. With sarcasm, the aggressor says the hero must be fuming with rage, but that's just how the game works. Challenging the protagonist, the masked man invites him to report him, and not to forget to include his name. With a bruised face, our hero curses at him and swears revenge. Near the masked man, a blue orb starts to float as a cute voice informs him he's received a message, and he looks surprised. The masked villain sighs, saying the fun was just beginning, and the Red Knight asks what's up. He grumbles that the guild master called him, and the Red Knight just laughs, wishing him a good time. As the masked man turns to leave, Chun-shik, lying on the ground, asks where he thinks he's going and says he won't let him get away. At that, the masked man steps on his hand, asking why he's so annoying and persistent, and our hero screams in pain. With a shadowy silhouette, the masked man says he's leaving and tells the Red Knight to teach Kim a lesson. The knight in red armor comments that Kim Chun-shik should have thought better and asks why he talks so much. Then the knight says they're going to enjoy the rest of their time together. A blast of blue energy is fired at the Red Knight. Chun-shik, face wounded and shocked, wonders what just happened. A blonde elf appears holding a skull that emits blue smoke and asks if a veteran should really be intimidating a newbie. The new elf waifu continues, saying that only the worst scum would do such a thing, staring at Kim Chun-shik. Smiling, she uses Sand Skull, a legendary item that temporarily knocks out enemies, and orders the knight to vanish. The scene shifts to a preview of the Nova's World update announcing a revamp of the pay-to-win system. On a large stage, it's announced that the CEO will take questions from the public. CEO Kim Chun-shik introduces himself and says everyone can ask questions, but he'll ask the first one. At that moment, our hero is surprised by the very question he just asked. A man in the audience questions the slogan about fun without paying to win, asking how that was fixed. For a moment, Chun-shik hesitates and the man continues, saying that before endgame content was only for those who bought VIP packages. Adjusting his glasses, the man suggests that maybe the CEO doesn't know that because he's never played the game. He goes on to say that for someone with a lot of money like the CEO, that doesn't apply since he can start with all the items. Kim's face turns grim, and a nervous assistant says they can move on from there. An irritated smile forms on the protagonist's face as he thinks about what he just heard. Kim Chun-shik yells on stage that winning without pain just means a lack of effort, and that in his day, hard work paid off. He challenges the idea of never playing for free and promises Secretary Jong he'll do it in 1 year, and he'll also reach rank 1. Back in the game, the Red Knight gets up dizzy, asking what happened. Lying on the ground, our hero asks the elf who she is and why she helped him, but she doesn't answer. The new elf waifu smiles, throws a potion at him to heal, hitting his head, and tells him to drink it. Then Chun-shik complains about her throwing stuff, and the elf laughs, saying she thought he'd catch it. He drinks the potion and asks if she didn't defeat him, but the elf says they should run. His new elf partner explains that the item only made him pass out, as the knight rises behind them. The Red Knight, with furious eyes, curses the two of them, calling them damn small fry. At that, the elf smiles at seeing the knight back on his feet, and Chun-shik asks if she has a plan for them. She grabs Chun-shik's wrist, saying of course she has a plan, and he's surprised by the action. She yells for them to run like hell and pulls Chunshik as the knight chases them. Chunshik asks if there's no other way, and the elf says she's weak and can't beat a max level. The red knight gets ready to strike, and the elf admits she might not be able to beat him, but she says she can do things like this, and turns around to launch something at him. A green projectile hits the knight, who says it's nothing, but the projectile explodes on his body, catching him completely off guard. Covered in green goo, the knight screams, and the elf comments that it's sweet and very effective. Chunshik asks what that is, and the elf, with slime on her hands, asks if he's never seen it before. The elf explains that it's slime gloop, a rare item that slows enemies down, and she mocks the knight. Confused, Chunshik asks what slime gloop is and complains that he doesn't understand today's youth. Then the protagonist's eyes go wide in surprise. Mocking him, the elf says even her dad knows what it is, and Chunshik shouts at her to be careful. The knight attacks the elf from behind and calls her a Dan Weasel. She complains in pain and says that actually hurt. The elf laughs, saying she was lying and that he missed, calling him a newbie. She also warns that it won't be good for him to move so much, and the knight feels his body acting strange. Then the elf explains that slime gloop multiplies with movement, turning into a slime monster. She opens a portal, saying the transformation won't break if he isn't attacked, and Chunshik finds it amazing. The knight calls Chunshik a newbie, and Kim grumbles in response. Then the slime calls out to the blazing champion, says it'll remember his name, and that next time he'll die. Irritated, Chunshik says that Brat isn't his friend and should get beaten for having no manners. That's why our hero says the other guy's the one who's going to suffer, and he better learn some respect, while the elf makes a face and the slime asks to be let out. Alone, the slime curses them as sons of bitches, then mutters. Someone asks the slime what the hell he's doing. The masked man appears on a giant bat and asks how the knight ended up like that, and he replies someone got in the way. So the masked man calls him an idiot and asks about the newbie. The slime says he used a return portal. The villain reveals that the guild master ordered him to check if there's a Kim Chunshik among the newbies, and that there's a bounty on him. The scene shifts to the city square in front of the Statue of Death. Jung's eyes widen in pure shock at the situation. The secretary appears, wondering how long she was there and regretting letting her guard down. She thinks that without her, the CEO will struggle and give up on his promise, making her a failed secretary. Chunshik and the elf Psychidox walk by, and he says the new items are convenient, and she asks why he sounds like an old man. Waving, our hero says hello to Jung, and that he's happy to see her alive, and she's unsure how to react. Jung hears the story and thanks the elf for what she did. With that, Psychidox laughs and says newbies should help each other, and that it reminded her of an old memory while they sit at a table. Then Chunshik praises the girl for the slime gloop, saying that even if she lacks manners, she's great, and she denies being that good. The elf asks Jung about her job and salary in the real world, but says what really matters is being good at games. Jung tells Kim she'll try harder, calling him Blazing Champion, and he looks confused. Blaming herself, Jung says she should have protected him, and that it won't happen again. Smiling, Chunshik tells Jung that it's okay and that it was his fault for being weak. He continues saying she doesn't need to worry so much, and the secretary is surprised. That's why the protagonist announces that tomorrow he'll team up with Exekidox, and Jung doesn't need to help him anymore. Then Jung is startled and asks what he means by that, and Chunshik says she scared him. He explains that he asked her for this favor even though she had her own things, and now he wants to do it alone. His secretary argues that he can't trust anyone and that Exekidox is suspicious. Because of that, Chunshik scolds Jung for accusing someone like that and says it's his final decision. With a serious look, our hero tells Jung he understands, and that this isn't a request, it's an order, and she becomes distressed. At that, the blonde elf says she can teach him better since her main character is max level. So Kim says the secretary can go, that it's time for her to leave, and she agrees, saying she understands. Psychidox waves goodbye to Jung, who thinks the elf seems strange. Even so, Jung remains suspicious and thinks the elf is plotting something, or she wouldn't have made contact. Walking alone at night, Jung thinks to herself that she'll protect Kim no matter what happens. Meanwhile, Chunshik tells his new companion that he dismissed Jung and asks why she wants to party up with him. Then, Psychidox laughs and replies it's because they're in the same boat and that newbies should help each other. With that, our hero agrees that people help each other and compliments Psychidox, who laughs and says he sounded like a boomer. The girl says goodbye, saying she's played too much, and Kim comments that it's already night and time flies. At that moment, Psychidox says they'll start leveling up tomorrow, and Chunshik replies, see you soon. Then the blonde elf walks down the street humming and laughing to herself suspiciously. Suddenly, Saikidox lets out a loud laugh and says that was way too easy. The waifu thinks that since he has a secretary, he must be president of a big company and that she's hooked a big fish. Then Saikidox thinks she'll soon take everything he has while the protagonist is shown drinking. The scene shows the imposing headquarters of Novus Company. A secretary informs Mr. Chunshik that the configuration of the requested VR device is complete. He smiles and asks if it's time, saying he'll be there soon. He takes off his jacket and says he didn't know the game was that good and is starting to understand the obsession young people have. Holding the VR headset, our hero looks thoughtful, and Secretary John calls out to him. She says she'd still like to help him. Chunshik puts on the headset and says it's okay. He wants to try with his own strength because it's been a long time since he's dedicated himself to something. He thinks he just wants to get strong quickly to punish those jerks from yesterday, and that he can't even sleep from the rage. Our protagonist, leaning back in his chair, tells John not to worry and to go home because he's just going to play a little. Then she apologizes to her boss. Chunshik's eyes close as he enters the virtual world. Already in the game, the protagonist thinks that John should forgive him for this. Then Saikidox appears and waves at him cheerfully in the middle of the square. While our hero stands still, a shadow watches him from an alley. Secretary John spies on Kim and thinks, "This is for your own good." The blonde girl asks what he plans to do today and says they need to level up while he looks at a guide. The guide says he needs to do missions and capture monsters until level 10 and then, starting at level 20, go to Sahirio's. At that moment, the rude elf grabs the guide from his hands, asking what he's studying so much and wanting to see it too. Annoyed, Chunshik says that an older person is talking, and Saikidox notes it's just an old guide. He gets indignant, and the elf says no one levels up in such a dumb way anymore. There are better and faster methods. For that reason, our hero asks how exactly people level up nowadays. A sinister smile appears on the girl's face. With a mischievous look, Saikidox tells him to just follow her, and that she's going to teach him very well. In front of a shop, Chunshik asks if this is how you level up quickly, and the elf makes a mischievous face. A cat vendor announces the Lucky Know This starter set with XP bonuses and items. Because of that, the protagonist says he doesn't have money to buy it, and the blonde elf explains that it's with real money. The elf thinks excitedly that he walked right into the spending swamp. It's revealed that Novus World is pay to play, and those who don't pay don't grow as fast as those who do. Spending money means faster growth and more fun as a mythical item is shown. With that, Saikidox plans to make him spend to get good items and then steal him for her perfect plan. Chunshik says he's not interested in spending real money, and the girl says it's just $9.99. The elf is shocked and asks why he won't buy it, and he replies that spending on games is a waste. Because of that, the girl insists it's just $10, and with that, he can level up quickly and easily. Then the protagonist repeats that he's not interested, and Saikidox gets smacked on the head by Kim. Annoyed, our hero asks if $10 is the name of a dog and says he'll level up with his own strength without items. Chunshik complains that young people think money solves everything, and the blonde elf calls him a damn boomer. Then the protagonist says he has something to ask, and the girl asks what he wants. Our hero asks about becoming number 1 in the game and what he needs to do to become that. At that moment, Saikidox is speechless, staring at him wide-eyed. The elf laughs hard and says his goal is to be a ranker, but with his skill, there's no way. Then the elf laughs again and says he actually can, since everyone's goal in the game is to be a ranker. She explains that in the game you start at max level with the set and then earn karma points for ranking. And she continues saying that every action gives karma, not just PV or PvP, but also missions and building. Curious, our hero asks if high karma gives first place, and Saikidox confirms and asks what he needs before that. Then the waifu presents the Novus Starter Set Volume 2, saying that to save money, this set is a good deal. He steps away and tells the girl to walk faster or he'll leave her behind. The blonde elf complains that Kim never listens to her at all. The scene shifts to Durolith Forest, and the girl tells the protagonist to wait. Then Saikidox asks why he plays the hard way, and he tells her to shut up while looking at the guide. He reads about a horned bear and asks where to find it, and she says it's an epic mob that's hard to catch. Looking serious, the protagonist observes something. Suddenly, a player is attacked by small horned creatures. Looking at that, our hero asks if they shouldn't help, but Saikidox says to ignore it since it's not their problem. The elf explains those creatures give barely any XP and are impossible to catch, just a nuisance. She says they should ignore it, then looks confused when she sees he's vanished. Our hero says that even so, that's a place where people live, and if someone needs help, he attacks the creature saying he won't ignore them, and the blonde elf covers her face serious. At that moment, Saikidox shouts that if he's going to do something, he better do it right and hit with the blade, and he's confused. Two creatures attack him from behind and he screams. Surrounded, he shouts for help from the girl because there are too many of them. Then Saikidox says she warned him not to go, and that alive or dead, That's his problem. Chunshik complains about his partner. Thinking he might die like that, our hero begs for help. A helmeted knight appears and Chunshik asks who he is. The elf's eyes widen at the surprise appearance. The knight gets ready to attack, and the protagonist says he can destroy them all. Surprisingly, the knight uses a healing item to restore the protagonist. At that moment, Chunshik and the creatures look at him, while the knight seems embarrassed and the elf asks in surprise if he's a healer. Psychedok says no one would think he's a healer with that body, and Kim thanks him for the healing. Healed, our hero feels amazing, like he's in his 20s again, and attacks the monsters. He praises the knight's work and asks him to keep going while Jung watches from afar. The hidden secretary thinks her CEO is in danger. She thinks she can't reveal herself to help the CEO. Then in desperation she grabs one of her arrows. Jung decides to help that way and readies her bow. Her first target is one of the creatures attacking Chunshik. With a precise shot, she uses the skill Perfect Aim Shooter. The creature wonders what's happening as the elf and the secretary watch. A beam of blue light shoots through the forest with a loud sound. Curious, our hero and the knight wonder what that noise was, and Psychedox looks back. The creatures begin to flee, and Chunshik asks why they're acting like that. The blonde girl explains it's because the owner of the forest has appeared, and he tells her to speak clearly. Then the elf simply asks what he thinks, and huge claws appear. She says it's that thing he needed to catch, the horned bear with a menacing aura. So Chunshik and the knight look at the bear, and our hero is in shock. At that moment, the horned bear lets out a ferocious roar, showing its fangs. A flashback shows the horned bear sleeping peacefully in the forest. It sleeps with its tongue out, showing its characteristic horns. The bear dreams of a delicious pot of honey. Suddenly, it wakes up and licks its paw near the honey pot. Then the bear opens its huge mouth, ready to devour the honey. Secretary Jung's arrow strikes the bear right on the head, a critical hit. The bear's eyes turn red with fury, and it lets out a massive roar. Worried, Chunshik asks what they should do since the bear looks extremely angry, and Psychedox says to kill it. At that moment, our hero says he didn't know it was that big, and the bear attacks him with its paw. He screams and dodges the horned bear's powerful blow. Then the elf warns that one of its attacks causes instant death, and he asks why she's only saying that now. A loud noise is heard, and the elf seems bored with the situation. The horned bear is described as the top predator of Dorolith Forest. It's also said to be the first real challenge for newbies, nicknamed the newbie guillotine. Then Psychedox thinks it's not so bad if he dies a few times there. She keeps thinking that this way she can tempt him into spending real money, and that after dying several times, he'll realize that without pay to win, he's weak. Then she would show up to defeat the bear, saying that real money makes you strong, and her plan would be complete. But the problem is the secretary hidden behind a tree. Because of that, Psychedox thinks the secretary who followed them won't just watch, and that the arrow was her doing. The elf thinks that if Jung were going to help, she would have done it already, so there must be a reason she's only observing. She considers that the bear lost blood but should still be able to take down two newbies. At that moment, Chunshik is thrown by the bear and lets out a scream of pain. Lying on the ground, our hero says he thinks his back flew into space, and asks if it's even possible to kill that thing. He asks the knight if he can do anything besides healing, if he has something else. The knight stays silent, and Chunshik asks if he really doesn't have anything. Suddenly, the knight seems to have come up with an idea. At that moment, the knight begins casting a skill. He uses Let There Be Light, creating a strong light that disorients the enemy. The bear bites the protagonist's leg while he tells the knight the thing was useless. At that moment, Kim is grabbed by the bear and starts screaming. Then the horned bear spins the protagonist wildly, and Chunshik screams for someone to save him. The knight appears to be watching the scene from a slight distance. Our hero appears lying on the ground with dust all around. Psychedox says he survived and asks why he doesn't give up. Then Chunshik gets up and says that giving up doesn't exist in his dictionary. He goes on saying that while getting beat up, he realized the creature's weak point. The elf is shocked and wonders if he already figured out the bear's weak spot. With that, our hero explains that many think it's the horns, but the real weak spot is where the arrow hit. The point between the horns is the true weak spot of the horned bear. That's why Chunshik says the beast is like a real bear, and that light must be its weakness. With a questioning look, Psychedox is completely lost. Remembering a documentary where a bear ran away after light hit its eyes, our hero concludes they're weak to light. The elf thinks that's complete nonsense. Then Kim asks the knight to use the skill on him, and when he gives the signal, the knight should block the bear. The horned bear growls, ready to attack. So our hero taunts the bear, calling it stupid to provoke it. At that moment, the protagonist positions himself with his sword in hand. With a focused look, he tells the bear to come at him. The bear charges, growling, while the knight also gets ready. The bear's paw comes in for an attack. The knight seems to hesitate for a moment, but then the knight blocks the bear's attack, and Chunshik yells for him to hold it just like that. In that moment, Chunshik takes the chance and attack. He uses unmatched sword technique number 1, but the blade glances off the bear. The knight then uses the skill Let There Be Light again. A strong light is fired toward the bear, the light hits directly between the bear's horns, a critical hit. At that moment, Taikadox is shocked. The horned bear lets out one final powerful roar, so the protagonist and the knight celebrate that they got the bear. The blonde elf says that if he was going to hit the bear like that, the light wasn't necessary, and he tells her to shut up. With that, the elf sighs and tells him to finish it off because the bear's not dead, and Chunshik is surprised it's still alive. At that moment, our hero approaches and tells the bear not to hate him too much, since it was the bear who started the fight. The bear with the arrow in its head gives a cute look, and Chunshik finds it strange. Then Psychodox asks what he's doing just standing there. For a moment, our hero is silent, looking at the bear. He turns and says he can't kill it, and the elf is outraged. Then the elf asks why he won't land the final blow, and he says he has his reasons. Our hero says the bear's face reminded him of his little dog Kissy, and Psychodox is shocked. She calls him crazy, saying a dog and a bear are different, and he replies they look very similar. The knight also seems to agree with our hero, seeing the fallen bear with a pitiful face. Annoyed, the blonde elf asks if he doesn't remember he almost died, and she calls him a goldfish brain. At that moment, the horned bear speaks with the knight, who nods. The knight seems to dismiss the bear, who walks away limping. Then Chunshik says he has to end this, and Psychodox complains that he should have done it earlier. Our protagonist looks and sees that the bear is gone. He asks where the bear went and how it escaped being that close to death, and the girl is in disbelief. Then the blonde elf grumbles, and Chunshik says these things happen. A system notification appears. Rising Battle Spirit wants to join your party, and he asks if it wants to join. So Chunshik says it doesn't matter to him and asks the girl, and she says it's good to have a healer. With that, our hero accepts and says introductions are overdue. He introduces himself as Blazing Champion, the party leader, and Psychodox asks who said he was the leader. Then Chunshik says the oldest is the leader, and the elf complains that being old isn't something to be proud of. Annoyed, the protagonist says if he said it, that's how it is, he's the leader. At that moment, Psychodox yells at the knight asking why the hell he chose strength if he's a healer. She keeps complaining that high strength is useless for healing and that he should be DPS or tank. Chunshik looks at a newspaper in the game and comments on how stocks rise and fall, and the blonde elf asks about the knight's skill. The girl yells BC, BC, and Chunshik is confused by it. He asks if she means FC Barcelona, and she explains that BC stands for Blazing Champion, then calls him a boomer, and he asks what she wants. Then the elf says they're going to the cathedral to reset Battle Spirit's stats and asks if he's coming. Our hero says it's fine and that they can go. He'll wait. So Chunshik, reading the newspaper, wonders if you can actually see news in-game, and someone calls out to him. He looks to the side, and a mysterious figure appears asking him something. A stylish demoness appears and asks if he's Kim Chunshik, CEO of Novus. Then the protagonist nervously denies it, saying she got the wrong guy, and the demoness says the way he talks gives him away. The new waifu says she's been a fan of his for a while and that his book was insightful. She praises his display of power and the goal of becoming rank 1 without paying, something she thought was unimaginable. Our protagonist wonders what to do in this situation and also questions whether she truly knows who he is. He remembers Secretary John's warning that if people discovered who he was, the whole world would come after him and leveling up would become difficult. In Kim Chunshik's view, the demoness looks like an enamored fan, and he thinks she doesn't seem like a bad person. He smiles and wonders what harm could happen if he revealed himself, and he begins to say something. Chunshik says he was Kim Chun, but Psychodox interrupts, saying he can't be Kim Chunshik. For a moment, our hero and the demoness look at the blonde elf in confusion. The girl argues that Kim Chunshik is rich and would obviously have spent a lot of money on the game. She continues, saying that this guy refuses to buy the starter set, and our hero complains about spending money on games. Then the demoness remembers that in the demo, he said he would be rank 1 without spending a dime. Mocking, Psychodox says that's nonsense and asks if they really think he'd play without paying. She calls Chunshik a proud boomer and says he'd be an idiot to play for free in a game owned by his own company. With that, the demoness agrees, saying now what the elf said makes sense. The waifu says someone like that would never play by the rules, and the blonde elf says this guy can't be him. Then the demon waifu apologizes, saying she was just throwing the idea out there, and Psychodox says he'd be offended. So our hero asks why she's looking for Kim Chunshik and if she has business with him. Then the demoness reveals that she's actually a reporter and wanted to get an interview with him. Relieved, Chunshik thinks that if she's a reporter and he revealed himself, it would be a huge problem, and Psychodox says goodbye. The blonde girl thinks that such an obvious tactic wouldn't work, and it was clear the reporter would try to trick him. Then our hero thinks that unfortunately, that's his target, and no one can get in the way. With a thoughtful look, the elf considers the possibility. Looking at our hero, Exekidox thinks that she honestly wishes this old guy were the real Kim Chunshik. The demoness thinks she was wrong again and that it won't be easy to find him. She turns around and sees someone asking what she's doing. Trake Doc, the masked man, appears and the demoness says she was looking for Kim Chunshik. He asks if she found him, and she says she failed again and that she asked everyone who looked old. The masked villain complains about how the guild master expects them to find Kim Chunshik and says he's not a detective. Then Trake asks the demoness what she'll do if she actually finds Kim Chunshik. At that moment, the girl draws her sword from her back. The demoness, named Red Pit Bull, says she'll have to kill him first and then see what to do. Then Trake says fine, but tells her to ease up on the kills. Her name shows up a lot in the reports. The hidden secretary recognizes the Red Demon Guild and wonders why they're after the CEO. Then Trake thinks that guy is the same one they fought in the tavern, and luckily they didn't discover the CEO. Before it gets too dangerous, Jong decides to leave, and soon a guard asks what she's doing there. She thinks that last time she put the CEO in danger, but this time she'll definitely protect him. The night returns, and our hero asks if everything was resolved, but the elf says it was a failure. He's already been to the cathedral. So Chunshik asks if he'll be stuck like that forever, and Psychodox tells him to stop increasing strength and choose intelligence. Trying to cheer up battle spirit, our hero says these things happen, and it's good to find your path. Annoyed, the elf says a healer with strength is a trash character, and the protagonist asks her to be nice. The elf says there's still a way to fix it, and the knight becomes curious. She explains about the beginner edition attribute reset potion from an old event, but it's no longer produced. Kim asks what's the point if it's not made anymore, and Psychodox tells him to listen first. There's a black market run by a guild that sells rare items, and they might find the potion there. The price isn't that bad, and they might be able to buy it there. Chunshik says they should go to the black market. Surprised, Exekidox asks if they're going right now, and if he knows what kind of place that is, but he says the problem won't solve itself, and since it's a problem for a new teammate, they should help. Calling out to Battle Spirit, our hero says to come along, and the elf gets a bad feeling. They arrive the 5th branch of the black market, and Chunshik asks if that's the place. Then Kim comments that the place looks scary, and the elf says it's just an alley. At that moment, the protagonist looks to the side and notices something. A gray cat dressed like a bandit appears, saying, "Welcome to the black market," and asking how he can help. At that moment, our hero is surprised by the cat, and Psychodox says she forgot to mention that. She explains that the guild here is run by kitty players, and to enter, you have to be a kitty. Psychodox whispers the item they're looking for into the cat's ear, and he says he understood and tells them to follow him. Then the elf tells the protagonist to wait there and not wander off. Chunshik complains, saying he's not a kid, and a cat with an eye patch asks if he's looking for something. Then the protagonist is startled as the cat jumps toward him. The cat introduces himself as Mai Miang, the Meowscot of the black market, and says he can find whatever he needs. With that, our hero says he doesn't need anything at the moment, and the cat invites him to rest at the guild. Thinking it might not be a bad idea to wait there, our hero decides to go. Then Mai Miang, excited, grabs his hand. The cat announces they've arrived, and they stop in front of a door. When the door opens, several cats welcome him into a bar full of them. The cats offer him a seat and a glass of grape juice, and one of them offers to take care of his weapon. At that moment, Chunshik comments that it looks scary from the outside, but inside it's just a cafe. He drinks the juice and starts saying the service is great. Suddenly, he feels a jolt and chokes. A cat apologizes, saying the grape juice got mixed with a random potion, and asks if he's okay. Then Mai Ning says it was an expensive potion, the staff messed up, and he'll have to pay for the item. But since it was their mistake, he'll get a 70% discount, and the protagonist can't believe what he just heard. So our hero sighs and says it's partly his fault for drinking without thinking, and asks how much he has to pay. The cat informs him he only needs to pay 30,000 gold. Then Chunshik is shocked by the 30,000 gold, and the cat confirms, saying it was originally 100,000. The eye patch cat asks if he has no money, and he confirms he doesn't. With a sinister look, Mai Miang says that's not a problem. The cat spins a 3-pronged fork in the air. Then Mai Miang, with several threatening cats behind him, says he can pay with his body then. The Black Market Guild sign is shown, and Mai Miang asks where they left off. Suddenly, Chunshik appears gagged, trying to say something. The cat with a knife recalls that he said he had no money, and says he understands, since he's a beginner. But the cat says that doesn't bring back the damn thing he drank. With a sinister smile, Mai Yang asks if that's how it was. He asks why Chunshik doesn't respond, wondering if the cat ate his tongue. The cat tells our hero to look at him, and says Kim is making too much noise. Then Mai Yang tells Fishflake to remove the gag, and the tiger-striped cat obeys. The gag is ripped off, and Chunshik screams in pain. With that, our hero becomes furious and calls the cat scammers, asking what they think they're doing since they made him drink it. The cat leader denies they made him drink and says he drank it himself. Chunshik yells that it's theft and calls the cats newbies and the eye patch cat size. Then the protagonist asks if they're not going to let him go, and the cat says Kim doesn't know their age. They've also got some years of experience and he should shut his mouth. Putting that aside, the cat proposes that if he does a simple task, they'll forget the whole thing. So our hero gets annoyed and asks why he'd do anything for them, and says he'll never do anything for those scammers. The cat says it seems like he hasn't realized his situation and tells Mangi to bring something. Then Yang shows a photo and asks if he sees that, and Chunshik looks confused. The photo shows the protagonist stealing the potion and attacking the cats, and he denies having done that. Then Yang shows a video of Chunshik drinking the potion by force, and says that nowadays making a deepfake isn't hard. The cat says that if VIP customers see the video of him terrorizing the shop, exposing him won't be a problem. At that moment, our hero gets furious and yells at the cats, asking who they think they're threatening. He stops and realizes they might actually expose him. Then they would find out he's Kim Chunshik, and if that happens, things will get complicated. Tied up and sweating, our hero thinks that must never happen. Yang says if he insists, there's nothing they can do, and asks if he wants to be put on the black market blacklist. The one-eyed cat clears his throat just as he's about to say something. At that moment, Chunshik gives in and says he'll do it, then asks what the job is. The cat smiles and says he should have said that from the start. Meanwhile, Isekai and the knight walk through the alley, and she comments that she didn't know the potion was so expensive. She remembers it being cheaper a year ago and says she was shocked by the 10,000 gold price. The elf tells the knight that it's okay because it doesn't stop him from playing, so it's fine. Suddenly, Isekai asks where the protagonist is, and if he ran off again. She looks around and notices something. Two cats are talking, saying the boss caught another sucker, and maybe they won't have to do boring stuff. One cat laughs and says newbies are easy to deal with, and the other says he must be suffering. At that moment, the blonde elf and the knight overhear from around a corner, and she thinks they shouldn't be talking about Kim. The one-eyed cat writes something and tells our hero it's an easy job. He adds that they wouldn't make a newbie do something too difficult. At that moment, Yang shows a quest request to capture a live red-burned dragon, and says the debt will be erased. Then Chunshik asks if he can really catch something that strong. The cat leader says yes, and that dragon is just in the name. It's no big deal. The cat tells him to hurry up and come back soon, and Chunshik asks him to at least say where to go first. He says his friend Nyangi will go with him and orders the cat to give proper instructions. A cat next to a portal says there's no time and tells him to enter the portal to get there. Chunshik then asks if they shouldn't at least say where it is and who would enter a suspicious portal, but the cat tells him to stop whining. The one-eyed cat pushes Chunshik into the portal. Seeing that, Yang tells Nyanyi it's up to him now. Fishflake asks the boss what they'll do if he actually catches it, and the boss tells him to stop mewing. The boss says that if he does catch it, it'll be good for them, but if he's just a regular guy, he won't manage it. That was what the mysterious figure wanted too. In the umbral misty forest, Kim falls out of the portal and screams. Then our hero complains about his waist and curses the damn cat. He looks around confused. Nyandy tells him to stop whining and follow him because he'll take him to where the dragon shows up. The cat warns that the mist is thick and to stay close behind. So Chunshik asks if he shouldn't describe the creature since he's supposed to be the guide. He complains about the cat's attitude and says he wouldn't last a day in an office, so Nyandy tells him to shut up and follow him before he rips out his tongue and warns that he could get lost. Annoyed, our hero says he's never met someone as rude as that damn cat. He yells for the cat to wait, saying Chunshik is coming, but that he's too fast. Alone in the mist, Kim sighs and realizes he can't see anything, wondering where the cat went. So our hero shouts to the cat, asking where he is and saying if he's going to give directions, he should do it properly. He complains that kids these days only do whatever they want. Suddenly something moves past him and he notices it. Then Chunshik says he finally found that idiot and that it wouldn't hurt to match his pace. He stops and looks at the ground, confused. A red lizard appears, and Kim wonders if that thing is a lizard. That lizard seems scared of something. Suddenly, the lizard jumps onto the protagonist's back, and he asks what it's doing. At that moment, our hero is confused with the lizard on his back. Glowing yellow eyes appear in the thick mist. A huge dragon with sharp teeth emerges, roaring at Chunshik. The dragon growls, baring its massive fangs. At that moment, our hero and the lizard on his back are terrified. Then the dragon charges and the protagonist runs away, screaming. He curses the scammer cats, asking how they expected him to catch that thing and if they're insane. At that moment, Chunshik is about to be eaten by the dragon and screams in desperation. He runs with the lizard stuck to him, yelling about why the thing won't get off him. Exhausted and panting, he stops right in front of the dragon's mouth. At that moment, the protagonist screams again, about to be swallowed by the monster. The scene shifts to a poker table where a cat paw reveals a queen full house. With that, Yang celebrates, saying the heavens are helping him and he'll use the money for the guild. A tiger-striped cat asks about Nangi, who left with the guy and still hasn't returned. The cat leader says that Nangi was a slave and not originally part of the family. At that moment, Psychedox appears at the door and says she has a question. The cats are startled, and the eye-patch cat greets her, asking what she needs. The blonde girl, accompanied by the knight, asks if a newbie came through here. Then Yang blinks and denies it, saying he didn't come. The elf insists and asks if he swears on everything that is sacred. The eye-patch cat avoids the question and asks why she's asking that. Then Psychedox explains that she formed a party with someone who disappeared and thought she saw him coming this way. She asks if he's sure he didn't come, and the cat confirms that's what he's saying. The elf waifu seems to reluctantly accept his answer. The blonde elf tells the spirit of battle that they're leaving while the knight pets a kitten. Yang offers free grape juice to Psychedox before she leaves. She refuses, saying she doesn't like little grapes and that the cat can keep it all, then walks out. Then Yang calls her a rude idiot, and the tiger cat asks if he should go after them. The tiger cat comments that the punk looks familiar. The cat leader agrees, thinking her way of talking and acting feels very familiar. Then Kin wakes up with his face being licked. The lizard is licking Chunshik's face while he's still lying on the ground. Still confused with the lizard on his lap, our hero questions what's going on. He rubs his head, remembering he was being devoured and doesn't understand what happened. The enormous mouth of the dragon appears, drooling and ready to attack. The dragon observes Chunshik, and he wonders what exactly is happening. Then the protagonist pushes the lizard, telling it to get off him, and the creature complains. On his feet, he wonders how to get out of there with a dinosaur above, and the lizard starts digging. The small lizard quickly digs into the ground, and Kin wonders what it's doing. So our hero questions if the lizard thinks it can just dig a hole like that. That lizard reveals a mole coming out of its mouth, and our hero asks if that was a mole. He remembers seeing many moles when he was a kid and calls the creature a very bad punk. With that, the lizard offers the mole to Chunshik, who asks if that was for him. Holding the mole, he asks what to do with it, and if it's dead. The mole suddenly opens its eyes and lets out a scream. Then the protagonist gets scared and yells, realizing the mole was alive. Then the mole quickly digs into the ground and disappears in an instant. At that moment, the protagonist gets hit in the face with dirt and complains, calling the mole crazy. He yells about the dirt that got in his eyes. Complaining, Kin shouts about his eyes while the lizard just watches. He rubs his eye and notices something. Looking at the hole, Chunshik realizes that the mole dug pretty deep and that he might fit in there. The lizard enters the hole, and the protagonist watches it go in. At that moment, our hero also dives headfirst into the hole. Then the lizard stops at the end of the tunnel, and Kim asks why it stopped and tells it to move already. Chunshik complains that he's dying, stuck in that narrow tunnel. He manages to get out on the other side and thinks he barely made it out. The protagonist finds himself in a cave full of glowing crystals. He admires the view, saying it's amazing, with the lizard beside him. Then Chunshik wonders how to get out of there and says he needs to figure something out, but the lizard makes a sound. At that moment, the lizard makes a noise, and Chunshik asks if he's supposed to follow it. The lizard starts running, and our hero says that means it knows the way out, and that it's not so useless after all. He complains that the creature is too fast while running after it. Then Chunshik yells for the lizard to wait for him. Suddenly, the lizard comes running back, and Kin hesitates. A swarm of flying creatures resembling bats with sharp teeth appears. Screaming, our hero calls the lizard a useless punk and asks why it brought those things with it. One of the bats lets out a shrill screech. One of the bats is cut in half by a sword. Panting, Chunshik says that was a close one. The lizard, now with glowing eyes and love-struck, looks at the protagonist, who has no idea what's going on. Then the lizard licks the protagonist's face, and he yells at it to get off and stop licking. Then our hero feels his stamina running out, and that at this rate, he'll be caught. Suddenly, Kim thinks of something. He remembers the slime gloop that the blonde girl gave him and thinks about doing something. At that moment, Kim throws the slime at the bats. The slime-covered bats scream in desperation. Looking back, Chunshik sees there are still many enemies left in layman's. Suddenly, the lizard on his back puffs up its cheeks, preparing something. A huge fireball shoots from the lizard's mouth, hitting the bats, and Chunshik is stunned. Seeing that, our hero is surprised by the fireball and says the lizard is better than he thought. Exhausted, Chunshik sits on the ground and says he ran more than he ever did in real life, while the lizard eats bats. He asks the little punk if that stuff really tastes that good and notes how it's eating just fine even after nearly dying. Then the lizard offers Chunshik a half-eaten bat, and he asks if it really wants him to eat it. At that moment, our hero looks at the lizard with a slight smile. He pets the lizard's head, saying it's okay and to take it as a heartfelt gift, then tells it to eat more. Suddenly, a blue light envelops the lizard. The lizard starts releasing smoke from its mouth and nose. The creature begins to grow, becoming much larger and releasing steam. Chunshik asks why it looks like that and wonders if it was because of the bats. Then the now much larger lizard growls. It shoots a small fireball, and Chunshik notices that it can still breathe fire. The fireball travels through the darkness of the cave. The projectile hits a huge blue dragon that was sleeping nearby. The blue dragon's eyes slowly opens, watching. At that moment, Chunshik and the now smoking lizard stare at the newly awakened dragon. Wyverns are the lesser members of the dragon species. Facing the blue dragon, Chunshik thinks they were supposed to be weaker too. The wyvern's reptilian eye observes intently. For a moment, our hero swallows hard and thinks that even so, it's still a dragon. He runs away screaming, since a monster that huge is not something a rookie would even think of facing. Then the protagonist keeps running and thinks he's going to lose his mind. He complains, wondering if today is some special cursed day, since all he's done is run away, and the lizard screeches. Kim tells the lizard to shut up and asks whose fault it thinks this is while running from the dragon. The lizard runs with its mouth open, making its usual noise. Irritated, our hero tells the lizard to stop making noise and stop talking. Small stone creatures appear in the path. He trips over one of the rocks and screams. At that moment, Kim falls face first on the ground, and the lizard keeps screaming. Lying there, he holds his face and complains, saying he has neither luck nor support. The wyvern approaches, growling at them. Looking at the lizard beside him, the protagonist is surprised. The enormous wyvern roars, showing all its sharp teeth. The little lizard's eyes widen in pure panic. The lizard steps in front of our hero, facing the wyvern, and yells while pointing to the side. The blue dragon looks toward where the small lizard is pointing. The wyvern growls, annoyed at the lizard's provocation. The small lizard leaps toward the dragon. It latches onto the wyvern's snout. The lizard bites the dragon's snout hard, making it scream. Chunshik cheers at the lizard's strategy. He takes advantage and pulls out his unmatched sword No. 1. Then our hero attacks the wyvern's belly. The protagonist's sword breaks during the strike. At that moment, the protagonist freezes in disbelief, holding the broken sword in his hand. The wyvern lets out a high-pitched scream with the lizard still stuck to its snout. The dragon starts flapping its wings and takes off, and Kim notices it. Suddenly, he sees an opening in the cave ceiling and spots the outside. The wyvern flies quickly toward the exit with the lizard still clinging on. Desperate, Chunshik yells and grabs onto the dragon's tail. He screams as he's carried upward by the wyvern at high speed. The dragon bursts out of the cave, shattering rocks and flying into the sky, while our hero screams as he falls. Then the protagonist is flung through the air and crashes to the ground, rolling and screaming. Irritated, Chunshik grabs the lizard, dizzy from the fall, and calls it a punk. He starts to say he almost died, but notices something strange. The wyvern flies through the sky, preparing to attack again, and Chunshik is stunned. Then the wyvern growls at them. At that moment, Chunshik has a worried look on his face while the lizard is still dizzy. The dragon attacks again, and the protagonist screams. Suddenly, the red dragon attacks the blue wyvern. The red dragon bites the blue wyvern's neck. Then Chunshik and the lizard watch in shock. The red dragon raises its head, roaring. The lizard jumps onto Chunshik's head, and he yells at it to get off because Kim can't see anything. At that moment, the red dragon charges again, and our hero yells at the lizard to get out of the way. The small cat Nyangi appears and fires a strike with his hammer. The blow hits the red dragon directly. Then Nyangi lands, and the protagonist is surprised. The cat says he remembers telling him to stay close and calls him a fool. Annoyed, Chunshik asks who he's calling a fool, saying the cat was the one who disappeared first. Pointing, Nyangi asks how he managed that, and our hero asks if he means the lizard. He explains that he found it after they got separated, and that it was a lizard that transformed. Nyangi says he never thought he'd catch it and tells him they're going back, but Chunshik warns the cat to be careful. The red dragon's claw strikes the ground where the cat was, but he dodges it. Then Nyangi charges up blue energy in his hands. The cat fires several blue energy projectiles. The beams hit the red dragon, who roars in pain. Impressed, Kim says Nyangi is way too cool and asks if he can learn that. Then the cat says he'll take it from here and tells him to grab the return item and go back immediately. The protagonist tells him to wait a minute while he's hit by a blue light. As he's teleported, he yells to Nyangi that he wants to learn the move and begs to be taught. At that moment, Yang sees Kim reappearing in the guild. The eye patch cat says he just got back and asks if he captured the dragon, and says if he did, that's fine. He goes on to say that if he didn't capture it, according to the contract, he'll become a slave, and he's shocked. Confused, our hero asks how he got there, and the cat notices the lizard, the red burn dragon. Chunshik asks the cat if that punk is the dragon, and Yang, surprised, asks how he captured it. He explains that he didn't capture it, the lizard just appeared next to him, and the cat tells him to hand it over. Then our hero says they should hold up their part of the deal first and mark the mission as complete. The cat leader looks at the paper and says Kim really brought the dragon, so he has to keep his promise. The request burns in blue flames, and the cat says the debt is paid. The lizard is placed in a cage, and Chunshik is surprised. The cat says if he's done with his business, he should get lost. Then the trap lizard screams and the cats say they'll take good care of the bastard. Miang then threatens Chunshik with a knife, asking if he's not leaving and if he wants to taste the blade. At that moment, our hero looks at the lizard. He apologizes. Then Kim says a promise is a promise, while the lizard cries behind the bars. Already outside the guild, Chunshik laments, saying this isn't good. The blonde elf bites her finger, looking worried. At that moment, Isekai and the knight are sitting down, and she wonders where our hero went and if he abandoned them. Someone tells the girl to stop shaking her leg because it scares off luck, and she looks to see who said that. Then Chunshik asks if the elf was okay without him, and she yells, asking where the hell he went. The elf complains that she sent several messages and asks if his messenger is just for decoration, and he asks if that's even a thing. So our hero opens the settings and sees over 100 messages, and Psychidox calls him the worst boomer. She says it's a good thing nothing happened and tells him not to go out alone next time. Chunshik wonders if he looks like a child and says he knows how to take care of himself, but the girl asks what's on his back. He looks behind and sees the lizard, asking how that punk got there. Then the elf asks what he did, and the protagonist says it's a long story and that he was with the lizard the whole time. Then Psychidox thinks she's seen that before and wonders if it's a rare creature, but that the lizard was taken from him. The girl suggests that maybe he tamed it, and that's why the lizard follows him automatically, but Chunshik denies doing that. Our hero asks if it's like a pet and says the lizard's name is now Kissy number 2. The lizard screeches and bites Chunshik, who complains that it dared to bite its master and threatens to turn it into a kebab. Back at the cat guild, one of them informs the boss there's a customer interested in the Redburn dragon. Miang celebrates, saying everything is going according to plan. He asks if anyone imagined the Ultra Nu would capture it and says they got rich out of nowhere. Then the cat boss tells them to take a look at the cutie, but the cage is empty. The one-eyed cat, irritated, yells for them to capture the lizard immediately. A shadowy figure appears, and a voice calls out to Lord Hyolyang. Naingi, lying on the ground, is asked how long he plans to stay like that, and is told that even if he dies, he can't defeat him. The cat says he doesn't care and just needs time because some idiot already tamed the Redburn. The shadowy figure says all the effort to capture it by digging a trap and releasing the dragon was in vain. He says he doesn't know who the bastard was that cut ahead of him, but if it's him, Vima, the 7th-ranked beast tamer, who catches it, he won't let him escape. The elf says that means there was an incident, and Kim replies yes, just like he said. At that moment, Psychidox says there were many rumors about the black market tricking people, and the protagonist gets furious. Irritated, our hero says that the more he thinks about it, the less he can let it go, and that he's going to report them. The girl asks what he meant, and Chunshik gets embarrassed. He covers it up, saying he wants to report them and have them suspended because they shouldn't be playing. Then Kim thinks he needs to be careful with his mouth, because if he talks too much, he'll get caught. Psychidox feels sorry for the old man who must be some rich CEO, but just gets tricked in there. She panics and asks herself what she was thinking. The elf remembers she needs to make him spend money, but he keeps refusing and she doesn't know what to do. Then he calls her. She asks if he called her and he says it's nothing. At that moment, Chunshik explains he broke his sword while running away and wonders how to get a new one. Smiling, Psychidox thinks she's got an opportunity. Then our hero asks where they're going, and she says they're going to buy weapons and tells him to follow her. He says it looked like the store was the other way, but she tells him to shut up and follow her. A player complains that he spent too much money and still didn't get the item, and asks if Novice isn't going to reveal the drop rates. The girl announces they've arrived at Kukurubingbong. Surprised, Kim asks why there are so many people there. Then the elf points and says it's because of that. On a screen, a slot machine appears with a cat that has X for eyes, and someone screams in despair. A female player cries that she lost all her money on Novi's premium slot machine. Chunshik asks what that has to do with him getting a weapon and says it looks like a casino. Then Psychidox laughs and asks if he doesn't get it. She shows him an old longsword, a gray item sold in the normal market, and then shows the Crocodile Slayer, a green item that comes from the slot machines. Pointing, the elf says there's more over there. She shows the Monster Titan Shredder, a purple epic sword with a 1% chance of coming out of the machines. At that moment, our hero doesn't understand anything, and the blonde elf laughs, asking if he still hasn't realized. The girl explains that all those weapons come from the machine, and with them, you can hunt fast and level up in minutes. Surprised, Chunshik asks about leveling up. She continues, saying that with good items, you can beat any player, which is why he needs good gear. And in that case, he can become the ranker he wants so badly. And Kim chuckles. Clearing his throat, the protagonist asks if she's saying all he needs to do is try that, and she says yes. Then our hero asks how to do it, and that it can't be free, and Psychidox says it's only $5. She grabs his shoulder and tells him to wait and listen to everything she has to say. So Chunshik complains that he already said he doesn't spend money on games, and she says she knows and tells him not to worry. He asks what she's talking about as she said he had to spend, and she asks him who said that. Then the elf goes on to say that he can do this without spending money, and he gets confused. He looks at the machine and asks if that wouldn't just be the same thing as before. The elf says it's very similar, but not exactly the same. Even though it's an older model, you can still find useful items, and they're going to use that one. Then Kim asks if you don't need money for that one too. Psychodox confirms and says what matters is the event they're having right now. She explains that the new update brings a lot of perks for newbies, including a free spin on the machine, so they each have one chance, and the protagonist and the knight are both shocked. Our hero says he can spin once for free, and that they've got a good system. With a wicked look, the girl realizes they've taken the bait. She keeps thinking that even without good items, a machine is still a machine, and later she'll make them spend. Our hero says he once won the 4th prize in the lottery, and Psychodox thinks everything will go to her. Excited, the elf girl asks if they're going to spin the wheel and tells the spirit of battle to go first. The knight approaches the machine, and Kim says he's getting excited and that it reminds him of gacha machines. He pulls the lever of the slot machine. A pink weapon fragment appears, a basic crafting item that requires 100 to make a weapon. The blonde girl tells him not to be upset and to try again next time, saying it's now her turn. Then the elf presses one of the machine's buttons. She thinks she's not expecting a good item from it. The machine starts spinning. Lights flash on the machine. Suddenly, she feels something strange while watching the machine spin. With her eye glowing in hope, Psychodox wonders if maybe she'll get a legendary item. Then Chunshik says something is coming out while the elf gets very tense. The machine stops spinning and announces the result. A message says she received a cursed dagger, and Psychodox gets angry with the result. She complains that of all things, it had to be that shitty knife, and that she should have known nothing good would come out of it. Suddenly, the elf seems surprised by something. A strong light shines from the slot machine. A message says the blazing champion received an S-rank unidentified weapon card, and everyone is shocked. In disbelief, Psychodox asks how he got that, and Chunshik says that's just what came out. She asks to see the item, and he asks why everyone is making such a fuss over it. The girl, stunned, thinks there's no way an S-rank unidentified weapon card came on the first try. She tells the protagonist to wait there because she needs to go somewhere quickly, catching him off guard. Then the elf thinks about how he got an item with a 0.141% chance, and that with that, she won't even need to make him spend. She plans to use a reading scroll to steal the weapon and get rid of the boomer. Kim says he doesn't know what it is, but it must be good based on how everyone is acting. At that moment, our hero asks the spirit of battle what it's for, but he doesn't know either. Someone says they didn't know if it was rude to do this on a first meeting, while the protagonist looks back. A hooded man says that, by chance, he knows that item very well and might be of some help. Excited, Chunshik asks if he knows how to use that item. The hooded man looks at our hero. With a smile, he asks Kim to show him the card he has. At that moment, Psychodox appears running. With a scroll in her hand, she celebrates that she got the unidentified item reading scroll. With a malicious smile, she thinks the card will soon be in her hands and that if it's S-rank, it will bring a lot of gold. The blonde elf runs back, shouting that she's returned. Panting, she asks Kim for the card he got and says she'll decipher it. Chunshik tells the girl about the card, and Psychodox is left confused. Then our hero reveals that he thinks he was scammed. The elf looks at him and asks what he just said. With an expression of pure horror, she screams at him. She asks what exactly he did to get scammed, and he says she should listen. Our hero explains that after she left, the hooded young man approached him. He continues, saying the man said he knew the card well and asked to take a look. Furious, Psychodox screams, asking why he handed it over without suspecting anything, calling him an idiot and saying she's going crazy. The hooded man looked at the card and said it was contaminated. He said he would remove what was contaminating the card and do it for free, and the knight and Chunshik were amazed. Kim finishes by saying that the man said he'd be back later but hasn't returned yet, and the elf is in disbelief. She covers her face, thinking it was obvious this would happen. The girl explodes, screaming that it was a scam and calls him a stupid idiot, and he questions her choice of words. She keeps yelling that not even a preschooler would fall for that kind of trick, and how could he hand it over? Frustrated, the elf screams at both of them, asking why they're so frustrating. Even for newbies, there's a limit. While Psychodox repeats that she's going crazy, Kim says he understands that he messed up. He asks why she's more upset than he is, since he's the one who got scammed. Awkwardly, the girl says that obviously if a party member gets tricked, she would be upset for him. Our hero says he didn't know she cared that much about him, and she shyly agrees. At that moment, the determined protagonist says they should go look for that scammer first. The elf asks if he saw the face or nickname clearly, and Chunshik says he was wearing a hood and glasses. The knight shows a sign with the name Dark Archangel Zeroth and Chunshik confirms that's the one. He points and says the scammer went that way, and Psychodox asks how they're going to find him in such a huge map. At that moment, our hero is left speechless and says he doesn't know anything anymore. Meanwhile, the hooded man walks along, humming. He holds Chunshik's stolen card while continuing to hum. The scammer walks happily with the card in his hand. He says that even he managed to get the card and that what he did was just a prank. He smiles, thinking it's true that a man like him is perfect, and someone calls out to him, asking his name. Zeroth is startled and drops the card, and the voice asks if he got anything today. Two beautiful women watch him, one standing and one sitting, and one of them says to look at him pretending to be dumb. He says of course not, that it was just loot he got by tricking some idiot, and the woman says she'll punish him. The woman asks if that's a card. The two look at the card, and one of them says it looks really good and expensive, and that he might be able to get an item with it. She tells him he did well, and now he should leave, and he doesn't understand. Zeroth says that last time she told him if he did well on the party mission, maybe she'd do it with him. The red-haired woman asks if she really made that kind of promise. She says she's canceling the promise she made, then says goodbye, and Zeroth is left shocked. The blonde woman asks if he's deaf, and reminds him she said to get lost, and the redhead tells her to use kinder words. The redhead says she's sorry for Zeroth, but they already have their own party. He complains that that's not what she said before and asks about the promise. The blonde with a sword in her hand complains that this Otaki bastard won't shut up. She threatens him with the sword and tells him to stop messing around and asks if he really thought they'd play with a loser like him. The redhead says that although her words were harsh, it's true that his actions make him look like a loser. She continues, saying that every time he talked, it was disgusting, and it was funny how he had never spoken to a girl before. The two, with dark expressions, politely tell him to get lost. Zeroth, upset, curses the two of them, calling them ugly women and complaining that it's too much after all the effort he put in. He keeps ranting that they treated him like an idiot when they're just ugly women themselves, and other female players look at him. He wonders if, in the end, it was his fault, and if things would have turned out differently if he were different. Suddenly, Joan appears behind him with a hammer, and he sighs, saying nothing ever works out. Then he feels something behind him. Someone asks if they should give up on this, and another person answers that it won't be easy to find someone in that space. At that moment, Chunshik says he guesses he took the game too lightly, and Psychodox complains that if he hadn't been scammed. He says there's a saying that easy come, easy go, and he'll just consider the card the same way. The elf yells that that's nonsense, asking if he even knows how expensive that card was, and Kim realizes something is happening. Psychodox asks if that was the scammer. The protagonist approaches and says it's definitely him, but wonders what that punk is doing there. At that moment, the mage wakes up confused and wonders what happened. Then the elf grabs Zeroth, yelling at the scammer to give her card back. So Kim tells her to calm down, saying he's the one who should be angry. Why is she more furious than he is? Zeroth asks who he is, and our hero realizes the scammer has regained consciousness. The three of them stare at Zeroth and say they all need to have a little chat. Suddenly, Chunshik gets a serious look. They ask if he still has the card, and Zeroth, kneeling on the ground, confirms that he does not. The elf asks who has the card now and tells him to speak, and Kim asks why she's getting so worked up. He says he understands the card isn't with the scammer anymore, so either he gave it or sold it to someone. Then Zeroth says yes, and that one could say it was sold, but perhaps stolen would be a better word. At that moment, Psychodox remembers that's exactly what they wanted to know, who had stolen it, and Zeroth says it might be hard to explain, but if they could give him his book, maybe it's written there, and they all look at the book. The blonde elf tells the knight to hand over the book and warns that if he jokes around, he'll die. At that moment, Kim gives the book to Zeroth, who thanks him. Then the mage bows and laughs, saying that in that case, it's a real shame. With glowing eyes, he says they easily handed the spellbook over to him, that our hero really seemed like a fool, and that he was particularly amazing. They messed with the wrong guy. With a purple aura in his hand, Zeroth says he was already feeling kind of down. He gives them 3 seconds to run, unless they want to be swallowed by the darkness of shadows and feel eternal pain. The cheerful blonde says to her friend that this is insane, and that someone she knows said the card is super good. She explains that he said it was S rank, and that it spawns a weapon, so to never sell it and keep it safe. Then the redhead asks if the blonde knows how to use the card, and she admits she's not really sure how. The redhead says it's fine, and that if they don't know how to use it, she'd rather sell it and get supplies with the money. She asks if it's the start of the Battle Royale season, and says they should grab some good items. Someone greets the girls, saying hello to both of them. With a shark-toothed smile, the voice asks if they're by any chance getting ready for the Battle Royale. The red-haired woman asks who she is. The horned demoness says they're not suspicious or anything, and that they're just here to promote their guild. She introduces herself along with the Red Knight as members of the Red Demon Guild. Then the demoness offers them a red energy drink, saying she thought they might need it. The elf asks if that isn't dangerous, and Kim says to let him handle it and see what he does. With a wicked smile, Zeroth says it looks like they're still pretty relaxed, but that's going to end now. Surrounded by dark magic, he says he's going to show them his unpredictable black magic spell. He casts, "Awaken, brothers from my darkness, darker than ash. Your master commands, answer me." A huge purple flaming skeletal creature appears, the Dark Lord of Shadows, Velkias. Then Chunshik is surprised and scared. The spirit of Battle Knight also looks shocked. Sekidok sighs at the situation. Little Kissy No, too, looks with his big yellow eyes. At that moment, the lizard stares at Velkias' small summoned form. Zeroth laughs and asks what he thinks. He brags about how incredible his Velkias is and asks if he's speechless and having a hard time. When Zeroth orders Velkias to destroy the insolent ones, the lizard Kissy No, too, devours the summon, and Zeroth is shocked. Stunned, the mage says he can't believe his ultimate weapon, Velkias, was eaten in one bite. The pet spits out the purple remains of the summon, and Zeroth screams. Then Chunshik says he thought he was going to show something amazing, which scared him, but it was all just for show. Psychodox explains that it's because he's a low level but tried to use a high level skill for no reason. She continues that novices may have recommended levels, but there's no level cap. Anyone can use skills. Trembling with anger, Zeroth says anyone can see he's low level and that it was hard to summon. He grabs his book and says this isn't over because he still has plenty of tactics. Zeroth casts, "I summon those born in the shadows of the darkness of the abyss, Darkness Fireball." A system message appears saying mana is too low, and he's left speechless. The blonde girl kicks Zeroth in the face, yelling at him to stop with this nonsense, and everyone is shocked. Then Kim asks if he didn't act alone, but someone made him trick them, and the mage confirms. Then Zeroth apologizes and says he cinched with them by accident, without realizing it was a trap. At that moment, Psychodox thinks she never imagined she would also be betrayed. In a flashback, a boy is called by someone to go into dungeons with them. The figure says that if he tries once, he might get rich, and if it goes wrong, he'll protect him. The boy turns his face and asks who he is and why he acts like he knows him. A shadowy figure laughs, saying he's never met anyone like him. The blonde girl clicks her tongue in irritation. Then Kim calls Zeroth a scoundrel and asks if that's what he calls an excuse, and if he has any idea how serious it is to deceive someone. He continues the lecture, saying that just because it's a game doesn't mean he has to like it, and that habits tend to stick. Then the protagonist tells Zeroth to reflect sincerely and move on, and Psychodox is surprised by the attitude. She asks if that's it, and what happened to the card, and Chunshik says he received an apology. He goes on to say that anyone can make mistakes, and that Zeroth said he won't do it again. The mage looks away, and Chunshik says it's not like the kid did it with bad intentions. The elf says that although it's a shame, there's nothing more they can do, so they should drop the matter. At that moment, the blonde elf makes a face and gulps hard. She mutters that she doesn't know anything anymore, and that he doesn't even realize how rare that thing is. Then Psychodox suggests they just forget the losses, and Chunshik says they'll just go find another weapon. Zeroth interrupts, asking if by any chance he's friends with those people. The red-haired woman's high heels are shown, and she asks why that loser is calling them. The blonde says he's a lapdog and maybe he found something better and wants another chance. Watching with a sharp look, the redhead says fortunately. She holds a red energy drink and says they have something to test, so everything will be settled. The mage greets the two women, saying they've arrived, and the blonde asks if he has something to give them. With a serious look, the redhead asks a question. She asks if it seems like he made some new friends or if he's already changed allegiances, and Zeroth gets nervous. At that point, Psychodox says that's enough and tells him to just hand over the card he took from the punk because it's theirs. Then the redhead asks who exactly she thinks she is to demand she return something, saying it was just a gift she received. The elf yells no, that it was originally theirs, and calls them scammers, and the redhead says talking like that won't solve anything. Chunshik asks them to look and asks politely if they can give it back, saying it was originally his. The blonde comments that he's a total ultra boomer, and he gets indignant at that. Then the redhead says that in any case, it's hers now since it was a gift, and calls him Grandpa Boomer. Irritated, the protagonist says the scammers aren't them, it's him, and that the punk already apologized. The redhead says that either way, she can't give up the card, but if they really want it, they can buy it. Then the girl asks if they even know how to use the card, saying it's an S grade 1 and without a reading scroll, it's just paper. She goes on to think that the market is full of scrolls and that they seem to be new to the game. At that moment, the redhead asks if she's being serious, and Psychodox thinks it worked. The blonde elf says she has a good solution, since both sides want something from the other. She proposes a duel with the item each one wants on the line, and her eyes sparkle. With a sly look, the redhead shows interest. Then the blonde says it's crazy for a newbie to challenge them to a duel, and that a duel's no fun without stakes. At that moment, the redhead says they accept, adding the condition that if they lose, they must delete their characters or get lost. Then the elf, with a confident smile, says she agrees. She says the bets are placed, but Kim interrupts, and she asks what he wants. He asks if it's not a duel to get his card back, and says it doesn't count if Miss Kiddo fights in his place. At that moment, Chunshik says he'll fight the duel himself, and Psychidox, surprised, screams loudly. The elf tries to stop him, saying it doesn't seem necessary, but he says he should step up to recover what's his. Stepping forward, the protagonist tells him to come and says he's going to teach those punks a good lesson today. Cracking his knuckles, Chunshik challenges the punks, saying he's going to teach them a lesson. Then Psychidox shouts, asking FC to wait a moment, and comments that it's good he wants to stand up for himself. She continues, reminding him he doesn't have a weapon right now, so how is he going to fight? And he realizes she's right. The elf offers to fight in his place since she got a weapon and feels strong, but he prefers that she just lend him the weapon. With that, the waifu thinks about what to do with such stupid stubbornness. She thinks that if FC faces them alone with such a low level, he'll be crushed. Zeroth and the Night Watch as Psychidox wonders how things even got to this point, and that there must be a solution. The elf's eyes widen as she has an idea. The red-haired woman asks what's wrong, and if he didn't want to duel, questioning why he's taking so long. Then Psychidox asks for a strategic timeout, and the redhead says, oh my god, and tells him to do as he wishes. For a moment, the elf gathers the group to discuss the strategy, and Zeroth agrees to the pause. With that, Chunshik says he doesn't know much, but it seems like a good idea, and Psychidox tells him to just follow what she says. She hands the dagger to the protagonist, telling him to use it since he doesn't have a weapon, and he thinks it's too short. So Psychidox explains that it's a dagger, so it's smaller, but better than nothing, and he notices something written on it. The red-haired woman apologizes for making them wait and shows curiosity. Then Chunshik asks them to understand that they needed strategic planning, and the elf tells him he doesn't need to say that. He says he won't talk much and tells both of them to come to the fight. The blonde expresses her surprise, and the redhead laughs at the situation. Laughing, the redhead says that right now it looks like he's trying to provoke her with that weird challenge, but it won't work. She tells Unji to go ahead and take care of that boomer for her, and the blonde asks if she means her. Then the red-haired woman says that Yunji should be able to handle that little rookie and asks if there's any reason for her to step in. Yunji shyly agrees there's no need and says she can handle it alone, and the screen says to get ready. At that moment, Chunshik asks why only one person is coming, saying he told both of them to come, and Yunji thinks about what he's talking about. The blonde named Unjirak Sunji, level 28, says she can beat him alone and that she's not sure if he can fight with that short dagger. Our hero replies that she should stop worrying about him and worry about herself, and the countdown begins. The screen says to fight, and Yunji quickly charges in, kicking Chunshik, who falls. He blocks a strike with his dagger. Then the protagonist groans in pain from the impact. At that moment, Psychidox, Zeroth, and the knight observe the fight in shock. Then the red-haired woman smiles with satisfaction. Seeing this, Zeroth comments that Miss Unjirak Sunji launched a terrible attack and that her specialty is the sword, and Psychidox says he doesn't care. Rushing in, Yunji lands several hits on Chunshik, who complains. Then our hero asks if that was serious and says that pointy thing is really prickly. He attacks, shouting take this, but Zeroth comments that Lord Blazing Champion's weapon is very short. The mage explains that Lord Champion's weapon is a dagger, and the reach of a rapier is twice as long. Then Yunji asks what he's doing and says that before he was acting all arrogant. She hits him in the chest with her rapier and asks if it was all a bluff. Watching, Psychidox says she landed a direct hit. With pain in his stomach, Chunshik falls to his knees, and Zeroth narrates that Lord Blazing Champion finally falls. Yunji asks if it hurt and why he doesn't give up before it hurts even more. Then Chunshik scoffs, saying that was nothing and that it's child's play compared to his time in the Marines. He tells her to stop with the sweet talk and come at him, and Yunji asks if he really wants to get beaten. She says if that's what he wishes. At that instant, Yunji attacks with multiple strikes from her rapier. The protagonist defends himself as best he can. The redhead comments that it's dangerous if he keeps taking hits, and that it looks like it's over. She goes on saying it's an obvious result considering the level difference, but then the red-haired woman wonders why his side is so calm even while losing, and that the elf's attention is elsewhere. Suddenly she gets startled and asks, wait, how much time has passed? She thinks that normally a rookie with that much damage would have passed out by now. Smiling, Psychidox says time's up. She yells for FC to push her back while she's still landing hits. Then Chunshik says he got the message from the girl and charges at Yunji. Yunji scoffs, asking if he's stupid and says she wouldn't back off after hearing that. She thinks he probably doesn't have much HP left and that she'll finish him off now. The blonde strikes Kim in the chest with a precise blow. Zeroth narrates that the sword pierced Lord Blazing Champion's body, but there's no bleeding. At that moment, Yoonji smiles and says goodbye. Suddenly, our hero grabs the blade of the rapier with his hand. Everyone is shocked by the protagonist's unexpected action. The red-haired woman is surprised. Then Chunshik says she walked right into the trap, and he was waiting for that moment. At that moment, Isekai yells for the spirit of battle to act now. Surprised, the red-haired woman asks what that is. Then the spirit of battle knight concentrates his energy. With a golden aura, the knight buffs Kim, who yells to respect elders. Then our hero lands a powerful punch on Eunji's face. She gets dizzy from the blow, her eyes spinning. Chunshik's companions look surprised. The screen says knockout and Eunji hits the wall and then falls to the ground. Shocked, the redhead says that doesn't make sense and asks what he did to finish her in one hit and how he didn't fall. Psychedox explains that the spirit of battle was continuously buffing and healing him, and the redhead asks what she means. At that moment, Zeroth offers to explain. He says that the skill Prayer of Faith is a buff that increases attack power based on cast time, and that Chunshik's HP didn't drop because of the Penance Bond skill, which shares life and damage between the healer and the target. The blonde girl, irritated with Zeroth for over-explaining, yells at him that he just read it on Novus Wiki. Then the elf asks if the spirit of battle is still okay, and he replies that his HP is high, so he can hold on for now. In disbelief, the redhead asks if that big lump is a healer and how he could join the duel if it was a 1v2. Psychedox says no one ever said it was a 1v2 and that if they had two people, it made sense for them to have two as well. Then the elf asks if FC is okay and still able to fight, and he says yes, thanks to the spirit of battle. So the protagonist says he's fine. Now with a shining aura, Chunshik gets ready and says he has a question. He asks the redhead if she's going to keep the duel going like that or if she's going to hand over the letter. With that, the red-haired woman goes silent. She pulls out a small red vial with a dragon symbol. Someone asks what exactly that is, and a voice says, "About this here." The demon girl presents Red Boom, a new skill-enhancing drug for PvP fights. Then the redhead asks about it, and Reppy confirms it's the boom from Kaboom. Reppy explains that they extracted parts of the random potion to create it and that it boosts abilities. Apologizing, the redhead says she won't buy it because it seems expensive, and they have no money and don't even know if it's a scam. The Red Knight asks if they really think they'd go that far just to scam newbies. Confused, the redhead asks why they were giving that to them then. He replies that there's no reason, just try it and later tell them how it went. The red-haired woman watches with a serious and very suspicious expression. Turning around, Chunshik asks if they were still trying to fight. Then the elf says that even if they're newbies, the level gap isn't that big and suggests they give up. That's why our hero declares he's not interested in intimidating someone weaker, and the blonde girl laughs at that. The clawed redhead asks what he means by that, and Psychedox mocks the boomer stereotype. At that moment, Zeroth explains that trash talking means belittling other players, and the blonde elf complains about the habit of over-explaining. The energy drink vial Red Boom shatters on the ground, spilling its contents. For a moment, Chunshik is startled, and then immediately feels a sharp pain. A red and dark aura surrounds the red-haired woman as she transforms. At that moment, the protagonist and his companions are shocked, and he asks what that is and if the girl is okay. Large red horns emerge, and a voice says it's surprising. The demonic figure asks if this isn't bad. The woman transforms into an imposing figure with armor and red horns, level 26. Named Hyuns. Surprised, Psychedox asks if that's metamorphosis and how, since her level didn't seem that high. The demon girl then asks if they should test out her new powers. Then Hyun strikes Kim with a powerful blow to the stomach. Coughing, our hero wonders what kind of attack that was. At that moment, Chunshik thinks she's so fast he doesn't even know what hit him. Seeing this, Psychedox asks Zeroth, whoever he is, how she transformed, and he asks for a moment to look it up. Hyun's laughs, saying she feels amazing and wonders how she became so strong. Then our hero says he doesn't know what happened. He attacks, saying he won't fall twice, and calls her a punk. The protagonist spits blood from the impact of her defense. The demon girl asks if he's joking with her. Then Kim tries to attack again but gets blocked. At that moment, Hyuns hits him with a kick to the stomach. The hero is thrown far by the force of the blow. The elf shouts FC's name and asks if he's okay. Lying on the ground, the protagonist says of course he's fine and that it's nothing. Psychedox says, as if you're fine, and that the healing from the spirit of battle can't keep up with the damage anymore. She wonders what the hell that bitch is and how she suddenly got that ability. The demoness starts to say something. She says she was wondering why he wouldn't die and that his healer was healing him the whole time. Then Hyuns complains that it's annoying and that this isn't a 1v1. The knight spirit of battle looks surprised and scared. With a powerful strike, the demoness attacks the healer. The knight is knocked out with a single strong blow from Hyun's. Then Chunshik shouts for Lord Spirit of Battle, who has been defeated. The elf, irritated, thinks that without the healing knight, there's no way they can win. She wonders how Hyun's got that form at that level, since metamorphosis is an advanced skill. At that moment, Zeroth appears with a book and says he found it, and Psychodox asks what it is. He explains it's the metamorphosis skill of the demon hunters called demonic form, and that it's max level. The elf, annoyed, asks how someone not even at max level can use the skill so easily. Surprised, the blonde girl thinks, a demon? Annoyed, the protagonist says that Brat is vile. He complains that she went after Lord Spirit in the middle of their fight, calling it pathetic, and Psychodox says they started 2v1. Then Hyun's asks if the tables have turned completely, and if he wants to end up like his friend. With a terrifying smile, the demoness asks if he wants to surrender. Kim says there's another word that doesn't exist in his dictionary besides give up, and that word is surrender. Then the demoness says he's going to die and charges to attack the protagonist. With a lizard on his back, our hero looks tense and bracing for the impact. Lizard Kissy number 2 seems nauseous and makes a gagging sound. A massive explosion of purple energy hits the protagonist. Zeroth and the blonde girl, surprised, ask what that is, and the elf shouts the name Velkias. The lizard lets out a scream in a purple aura, and Chunshik asks Kissy number 2 what he did. With an intense gaze, Psychodox says now's their chance. She thinks she didn't want it to come to this, but at that moment, the elf shouts for FC to listen to her, and that if he wants to win, he has to do what she says. Blushing, she recites a chant about her blade shining and delivering justice, and Kim doesn't hear her. Velkias, with a dark aura, says he finally takes revenge on the demon and repays hatred with hatred, and that he'll kill them all. Annoyed, Chunshik asks what she's muttering, and that he can't hear anything. So Psychodox repeats the chant louder about her blade shining and delivering justice. The demoness yells for them to get out and repeats the vengeance against the demon and repaying hatred with hatred. Embarrassed, Zeroth wonders how she can say such cringeworthy words and repeats the prayer. The elf and Kim shout together that they'll kill all demons and become her sword, that this is the path of the demon slayer. The protagonist's sword shines with an intense red light, and she's surprised. At that moment, Hyun's demonic form looks surprised and asks what that is. Holding the flaming sword, Chunshik asks what that is. A flashback narrates that a long time ago, demons invaded the world and killed everything, expanding their power. When all hope was lost, a man appeared with a double-barreled shotgun and a skull dagger. This man slaughtered demons alone, but since he never spoke his name, he remained unknown. Because of the memory of him massacring demons with explosions, he was called Boon Slayer and Boon Guy. Zeroth reads on the wiki that the Goroseville dagger was cursed and became a common item, but it can be restored. So Chunshik asks if that's really so amazing, and Psychodox shouts that it's just the item's backstory. She explains that the cursed Goroseville dagger is a rare item but trash in the game. At that moment, Zeroth says the effect only applies to demons and the duration is short, so no one wants to use it. So our hero says he doesn't know anything anymore, but if she says it's stronger, then they should start round 2. But he looks around and asks where that brat went. Hyun's demonic form vanishes in a cloud of red smoke. She reappears behind Chunshik with a powerful strike. Then the protagonist is hit in the back and screams in pain, surprised. He turns around confused and questions what just happened. Then the demon girl asks what that was in a threatening tone. She thinks she almost missed and that her body feels kind of heavy. Hyun's looks at her HP bar and wonders why her health is like that too. She remembers Reppy mentioning side effects, but not that they be like this. Laughing, Kim asks how she liked that, saying that's his natural ability. Then Psychodox comments that the demon girl is way too confident and that she'll die like that. The elf says she gets it now. Confused, Zeroth asks what she figured out, and she explains that the demonic form is strong but has a time limit. She continues saying the bitch transformed but is still in that form even after some time. Smiling, the blonde elf says in that case there's usually some other penalty. She concludes the penalty is HP drain, and the demon form looks surprised. At that moment, Psychodox brags that she was right and caught Hyun's, and Zeroth admits she's right. The elf tells FC to hit her once since she's already lost a lot of health and he'll deal extra damage. Then Hyun says that even so, they lost their healer, and one hit is enough to finish him off. To that, Chunshik replies they'll have to try and find out. He charges forward yelling, "Then let's go," and the demon girl also rushes to attack. The elf and the mage shout for FC to wait, and that he still needs to dodge. At that moment, the protagonist summons Peerless Sword No 2. With his flaming sword, he uses the move Demon Cleaving Slash, and Psychodox complains about the name. The screen announces knockout, and Hyun's falls to the ground. The demon girl on the floor thinks that this couldn't be happening. Excited, Zeroth and the blonde girl celebrate, saying that was awesome. At that moment, the elf congratulates FC on a great job and asks if he's hurt. Then Chunshik says of course he's fine, but the girl yells that he's clearly not. She throws him a potion and tells him to drink it to heal, and he thanks her before feeling pain. So Kim complains that she threw it again and has no respect, and Psychedox tells the spirit of battle to heal too. With that, Psychedox says one last thing. She says that since they won the duel, the redhead should hand over the letter, so the elf takes the letter from the hand of the defeated woman. The blonde girl says she lost because she used cheap tricks during the fight. Then the redhead grumbles, reminding them she added the condition of losing the character, and tells her not to back out. Then Chunshik tells the elf to let it go and asks what's the point of going that far, and she looks confused. He continues that even if she did something bad, they still got the letter back, and it's just a game. Then Kim takes the letter from Psychedox's hand and asks why she keeps taking charge if the letter is his. The elf, irritated, says they were the ones who started it, and Chunshik says he doesn't know, but since they have the letter, they should go. Getting closer, Zeroth asks to excuse him, and the elf wonders what it is. The mage apologizes, saying it's late but that he's really sorry and didn't think things would escalate just because he's useless. Looking sad, the mage gets teary-eyed and Chunshik says it's all in the past. He says that at that age everyone makes mistakes and asks what he means by useless, since he seemed pretty knowledgeable. Zeroth asks if, since he gave the dagger, Chunshik would be interested in trading, and Chunshik is confused by the fuss. Then Kim asks if that's how it works, and Zeroth says that's not how it works. Irritated, Chunshik asks how the hell it's done, or tells her to do it, and Psychedox says he has to do it to get a better item. He asks if that's how it's done, and the elf confirms, saying to merge them like that. The letter and the scroll shine intensely as they merge. A message says Servant's Execution Sword Cube acquired, and he asks what that is. Surprised, Psychedox yells that Servant's Execution Sword is insanely cool, and there aren't even 100 on the server. Then Chunshik asks if that little thing is worth 100, and the elf questions his lack of surprise, but he plays it off. The blonde girl says she'll show him how to use it then, and asks him to give her the item. A system message informs that the item can only be traded when the required level is reached, and Psychedox is left speechless. Desperate, the elf screams that she forgot legendary items can only be used at max level, and that she should have sold it. Then our hero asks why she would sell it, and she replies that to level up, she needs money. He says he's going to use it after leveling up, and that if there's a goal, hard work has a reason, and the lizard agrees. Suddenly, Reppy appears and asks if they'd tried the red boom. The demoness smiles with her sharp teeth. She notices their expressions and says it doesn't seem like it. The redhead, irritated, screams that she fought a duel trusting the potion and lost, and asks how they'll take responsibility. Then Reppy responds by asking what she means, saying they had mentioned there could be side effects. So Hyens complains that she didn't know the effect would be HP loss, and that they need to compensate for the damage. Then the blonde tells her sister to go away, saying she's just taking out her anger on them. Yenji asks what that was and says that's why she told her not to give it to those rookies. With that, Reppy says to Trake that she was going to kill them, but he was quick, and he warns her she'll be suspended if she kills one more. The blonde panics at the threat. Then Trake Doc tells her to just die quietly unless she really wants to die. In the office, Kim Chunshik asks the secretary what's next on his schedule. Then Jong informs him that first there's a meeting about the webtoon, and then the update conference. At that moment, our hero gets pensive at his desk and murmurs about how something is done in the game. Then Jong asks what he's looking at, and Kim says it's just tactics from Novus World on the forum. She offers help, but he declines, saying he wants to achieve it with his own strength. So Jong comments that it seems the CEO has been working very hard lately. Chunshik adjusts his glasses and says that besides the promise, the game has actually been fun lately. The secretary simply listens to her boss talk about the game and his experiences. Inside, Jung feels very proud of the CEO and roots for him. She thought she was worried at first, but now she's touched, and Chunshik hears a noise. An older man bursts into the office shouting for little Kim Chunshik. Shocked, Kim stammers and recognizes the man as President Song. Then Song smiles and says, "So this is where he's been hiding all this time." Already seated, Chunshik nervously asks the president why he came there. Annoyed, the president asks if he's going to act so coldly and reminds him what he said last time. Then Chunshik remembers it was to call him brother, and Song laughs, confirming that was it. Saying it reminds him of old times, Song asks Secretary John to step out for a moment. Outside, the head of security asks what kind of person Song is for the CEO to fear him so much. Joan explains she doesn't know the details, but it's not a money issue between them. She goes on to say that according to the CEO, it was Song who brought him to where he is, teaching him passion. At that moment, Jung says that's enough gossip and she can't hear what's going on inside, and the leader agrees. Inside the room, President Song says that was just to break the ice and he came to ask something. Song asks how the promise Chunshik made is going, and Kim, nervous, confirms he's been trying hard on it. The president praises him, saying he should face challenges with passion, and it's good to see. With that, Song quickly drinks his beverage as he begins to say something. Then Chunshik, confused, asks what Song means, and corrects himself to say brother. With a serious look, Song says that it's really nothing big. He asks about the Battle Royale Carnival update, and suggests they play the game together. Kim asks if there's any reason for Song to play with him since his level is still pretty low. Then Song insists that he needs him and his passion, and that his level is enough to participate. In light of this, Song says they've known each other a long time and are alike, and Chunshik awkwardly agrees. Then our hero says that in that case, he'll try to do as he wishes, and Song laughs, satisfied with that. So Kim suggests that since he already said what he wanted, they should have lunch together now. Then Kim asks his brother Song when exactly that game event will be, the specific date. Song playfully scolds him for not reading the announcements of his own game properly. He informs him that there's about a week left and tells Chunshik to get well prepared during that time. Then Song says the minimum level is 30 and jokes, asking if he's below that, laughing. The scene cuts to the game, showing Chunshik at level 17 with Kizzy number 2 on his shoulders. The protagonist calls out desperately for Miss Kiddo and the knight, and she asks what the commotion is. Then Kim demands to know how to reach level 30 in a week quickly, and she finds his urgency strange. At that moment, Psychidox laughs and says the easy way is using money, and he asks for another way. She asks why he's acting like this all of a sudden, and he gets embarrassed to answer. So our hero says he heard about an event next week and is trying to get into it. Then the elf asks if he's talking about the Battle Royale Carnival and is surprised he knows about it. She thinks she hadn't paid attention to it, but remembers her original plan involving him. Then Psychidox thinks her plan changed since he has the sword and doesn't spend real money. She figures Battle Royale is good for leveling up, and there's no reason not to do it. Smiling, the elf tells him to trust her, that she'll teach him how to reach level 30. She explains that it's not hard, but hunting takes too long, so they use competitive dungeons. Chunshik asks what that is, and Psychidox says she'll explain it to him first. She says an indun is an instant dungeon just for your party with several scenarios. And induns where two parties compete and fight are competitive induns, which they'll do. If you win, you get more scenarios than a regular indun, so they're used for fast leveling. He understands and asks what they need to do, and she says first they need a party. So Chunshik asks if the three of them aren't a party, but she says indun requires 4 people. Then our hero thinks about where they can find one more person to complete the group. Smiling, Psychidox says that's why they're on their way to find them, and he asks where. She points and says it's right there, the meeting square, where people search for groups. Chunshik comments on how crowded the place is, and she reinforces that indun is great for leveling. At that moment, the blonde girl explains the group roles and says they need a damage dealer. Curious, Kim asks what a tank and a dealer are, and she explains that the tank takes hits and the dealer deals damage. Annoyed, Chunshik asks why he has to be the one taking hits in the group. Laughing, the elf says she was just summarizing, and that's why it sounded that way to him. She says the tank is the most important and is actually the group leader there. So Chunshik agrees to be the tank if he gets to be the leader, and Psychidox thinks he just said that to say it. Suddenly, Psychidox changes the subject, saying that anyway, there's a problem with all of this. She explains that everyone there is already high level, and no one wants newbies in their group. Chunshik thinks about the problem of finding a 4th member for their group. The waifu tells him not to worry because she has a good plan to solve it. Nearby players comment and laugh about others having fun in the square over there. At that moment, the elf looks stressed and asks if that is really his good plan. So Chunshik smiles confidently and says yes, it's the best way to find good people. The Spirit of Battle Knight looks embarrassed or awkward about the whole situation. The 3 of them are sitting at a table, and Psychidox asks who even does interviews in a game. At that moment, our hero seems confident and says for her to wait and see, that it's the best method. A fly buzzes across the screen, making noise as it passes. The lizard Kissy No, who looks irritated by the sound of the fly buzzing near him. Then Chunshik wonders why the hell no one is applying for their interview. At that moment, Psychidox says that thinking rationally, no one would do this and that they should be begging instead. So our hero complains that this is the problem with young people. They don't even try if they think they'll fail. The elf grumbles, asking if this is some kind of company and who would come to an interview like this. A new player approaches and asks if this is the interview for their group. Because of this, the elf is surprised while Kin welcomes him and tells him to sit there on the box. She turns and is shocked by what she sees behind the first candidate. A huge line of players has formed, waiting for the group interview. In disbelief, the elf keeps asking herself if this is real and if people are really lining up. A hand gives a gold coin to a player who thanks them with a laugh. A player asks if it's true that he'll get 500 gold if he does the interview. A woman holding a sign confirms she'll give 500 gold for a complete interview. Wearing sunglasses, she asks in return that he keep it absolutely secret. First question: why do you want to join? And a candidate says he came because they were recruiting. Another punk candidate angrily asks what they mean by reason and tells them to just accept him. A player in huge armor just grumbles without saying anything. The second question is about group achievements, and a female player asks if they're recording. An elf player replies that he seeks money, glory, and lots of experience in parties. A cute girl says she likes it when handsome guys take interest in her, and it's funny. The player in the huge armor grumbles again in response. The third question is about the group, and one of the players admits he's new because people rarely ask that kind of thing. Unexpectedly, a small goblin comments that it's weird and that everyone seems stupid for doing this. Annoyed, the first interviewee stands up saying it was all a boring waste of time. Still grumbling for the third time, the armored player repeats the same comment as before. With veins bulging on his forehead in anger, Chunshik starts to lose his patience with the candidates. Firmly, our hero slams the table and tells the complainer to leave if he's going to treat people like that. While continuing to complain, the candidate asks if anyone there thinks an interview is child's play. Hearing that, Psychedox argues that it's just a game and no one should take it so seriously when looking for a group. Chunshik responds quickly, saying this doesn't even compare to a real interview, and the elf decides to give up. Approaching with respect, another candidate politely asks if he can be interviewed too. With a focused look, Chunshik calls the next in line to continue the selection. Smiling, Zeroth appears, asking how everyone's been since the last time they met. Surprised, Chunshik points at him and asks why he's there, and if he really came for the interview. Casually, Zeroth confirms that he did, saying maybe it's fate bringing him back, and Psychedox says to cut it already. Even so, our hero agrees to interview him, but warns that he won't go easy just because they know each other. Confidently, Zeroth replies that's exactly what he was hoping for and gets ready for the questions. Kim decides to start by asking why Zeroth wants to join that specific group. Firmly, the mage replies that the group seems like a perfect match for what he's looking for. Interrupting directly, Chunshik tells him to look him in the eye, saying he's not here to mess around. Zeroth agrees, saying he's not playing around either, and Kim pushes again with the main question. Even acknowledging that the group is weak and low level, the protagonist still demands the real reason. Pressing further, Chunshik insists on knowing exactly why the boy wants to be part of the group. Without answering immediately, Zeroth lowers his head and thinks for a moment before saying anything. Hesitantly, he begins explaining that ever since he was young, he always heard he was useless at everything. His lack of talent and sense made people dislike him, and that left a mark. It was then that he found refuge in Novus World and decided to create a new self in that world. Even inside the game, he felt useless, until Chunshik told him he wasn't a useless person. With emotion, Zeroth says that phrase made him happy, and that's why he wants to give back by joining the group. After hearing the mage's touching story, Chunshik seems to reflect for a few seconds. Thanking him, Kim says okay and calls the next one, while Psychedox mutters that the whole thing was super cringe. Right after, a new blonde guy taps Zeroth's shoulder and asks if everyone there really enjoys doing this. Skeptical, he asks if that's really an interview and if they're done by people who've actually been in one before. With sarcasm, the blonde mocks along with his companion, calling the group invalids who only have fun in their room. Firmly, Kim tells him to leave if he's not going to take the interview seriously. Mocking, the guy asks if Chunshik has ever worked in company to be doing this in a game. Psychedox, irritated, says his way of talking is way too rude and asks if he wants to start a fight. Chunshik points at him and proposes that he sit down and do the interview then, just to see what it's like. The guy laughs, asking why he would do that, but his friend encourages him, saying it would be fun. In a whisper, she urges him to go in and embarrass everyone just for fun. Changing his mind, the blonde says maybe it wouldn't be bad to spend some time with him. Without hesitation, Chunshik tells him to go ahead, and the guy sits down, ready for the interview. With a mischievous smile, the blonde says he wants to see just how ridiculous this interview will be. In silence, Chunshik and the guy stare intensely at each other, waiting for the first question. Seriously, Kim asks if he truly believes he fits into their group. With disdain, the guy replies that obviously he does, and of course he fits in with no problem. In an instant, he stops and thinks that the question feels strangely familiar. Without understanding why he remembers it, the blonde guy realizes he's heard the same question in real life. A flashback appears of a job interview where they asked him the same thing. The interviewer from the past says that wasn't the right answer, and that he expected something better. Frustrated, the interviewer states that everyone always gives the same answer with no subjectivity. Back in the game, Chunshik asks why he stopped and says the interview isn't over yet. With a slight tremble, the blonde guy seems shaken by the memory that suddenly came rushing back. With Chunshik's shadow looming over him, the prompt repeats that it's not finished yet. In the crowd, a female player points something out to her friend who doesn't understand what he's seeing. Curious, he asks what's going on, and she answers that it's an interview to recruit people. The girl remembers that earlier someone was paying people to participate in the interview, and her friend gets interested. Other players also comment that they heard people were getting money even if they didn't make it into the group. With an amused tone, a masked player says everyone there is putting on quite a show. Surprised, the Red Knight appears and sees that the masked man actually decided to show up. With a serious tone, Trake asks where Reppy is, and the other replies that she went to a meeting earlier. Irritated, Trake calls her useless and tosses something for his companion to catch without warning. Quickly, the Red Knight catches the bag and asks what exactly he just received. Casually, Trake explains that they're random potions bought on the black market to make their own concoction. Without warning, a cat appears asking the masked man to capture the blazing champion who's been deceiving everyone. Startled, the Red Knight asks if the masked guy is a complete idiot by any chance. With eyes glowing in rage, the Red Knight vows to destroy the blazing champion with his own hands. With a question mark above his head, the Spirit of Battle Knight appears, observing the scene. With a puzzled expression, Psychodox shows up next to him, looking at something she doesn't understand. Without losing focus, the protagonist asks the blonde guy why he stopped talking mid-sentence. In a sweet tone, the blonde guy's friend calls him dear and pleads for him to say something please. With wide eyes, the blonde guy expresses shock at what just happened. At the interview table, the others glance at each other, wondering why he suddenly stopped. Without hurrying, Kim lets out a sigh and comments that he sees no reason to continue there. The blonde guy's irritation is clear as he says the whole thing is a waste of time and tells Kim to move on. Stomping hard, he slams his foot on the ground and complains that those bastards dare do that to him. Without thinking twice, he grabs Chunshik by the collar and demands to know if they're trying to intimidate him with these tactics. Still grumbling about the interview, he launches a direct question about our hero's experience with this kind of situation. Already impatient, Kim questions his behavior and suggests maybe he ate something weird. Calling out to FC, Psychodox asks him to just stay still and not react. Firmly, she instructs him to listen to everything and not say or do anything to the blonde guy. The elf adds that even if he attacks, it's better to accept it in silence, and so he remains still. Loud and clear, the blonde guy declares himself part of the elite and says he earned his spot in a major corporation through merit. Yelling, he throws a punch at Chunshik while accusing him of making him feel like trash in that whole situation. With eyes tightly shut, Chunshik braces for the imminent impact. The attacker's fist stops just centimeters from his face, and he can hardly believe what he's seeing. A robotic guard appears just in time, grabbing the punch and declaring that PvP is forbidden in that area. With eyes glowing intensely, the guard reinforces the rule against fighting outside of authorized duels in the village. Not backing down, the blonde guy insists on knowing what Chunshik understands about interviews, while Psychodox tells him not to give it any importance. Gratefully, Kim thanks the girl for stopping the situation from getting out of control. Yawning and stretching, she comments that everyone knows attacking in the village leads to punishment. Suggesting credit where it's due, Psychodox says he should thank Zeroth, who called the guards at the right time. Curious, Kim asks if that's true, and the mage confirms that everything pointed to the situation exploding. With a thoughtful look and a slight smile, our hero stares at Zeroth for a few seconds. Without hesitation, Kim asks if his name was Zeroth, and the answer he gets is that Dark Archangel comes first. Officially, Chunshik announces that the boy has been accepted and welcomes him to the group. Moved, Kim says that his passion touched him, especially for expressing himself so honestly. Excited, our hero proposes that they work hard together. Clearly emotional, Zeroth expresses joy and says he also hopes to do his best alongside his new lord. The scene shifts to a busy city street with many shops and a cat wandering among the passersby. With enthusiasm, Psychodox comments that now, with the group formed, it's time to acquire some items. Grumbling, the Red Knight mentions that the Dan's Spirit of Battle is provoking him. Anger flashes in his eyes at the attitude of the other knight. Embarrassed, the Spirit of Battle warrior seems unsure how to respond. Unable to contain his frustration, the Red Knight says there's no need to provoke so much. With a focused and intense gaze, he seems to be reflecting on something. Nervous, the Spirit of Battle asks what exactly he's thinking about. With an unusual question, the Red Knight wants to know if by any chance he likes strong and manly male characters. Without hesitation, the spirit of battle laughs and affirms that of course powerful characters are the best. Smiling, the knight agrees that a male character needs to be muscular and full of strength. He asks if that isn't every man's fantasy, and the other knight nods enthusiastically. With a self-critical comment, the red knight says he still lacks strength even with all that armor. Curious, he asks what the spirit of battle was doing there, and the knight shows him a sign. With a mildly reproachful tone, the red knight says he should have warned him before and hands over a sack with items he no longer uses. Upon receiving more objects, the spirit of battle hears that those will also come in handy. From inside the sack, a purple item draws attention, and the knight comments that it's kind of expensive to just give away like that. But since he's in a good mood, he decides to gift him a random potion. With the potion in hand, the spirit of battle seems unsure what to do, but the knight says it'll be useful later. From afar, someone shouts, calling the knight and asking him to hurry up. With a wave, he says goodbye, saying he needs to go, and that next time he'll carry him. Soon after, another call makes the spirit of battle turn around, announcing that the items have already been bought. Arranging a meeting point, he asks them to meet where they last saw each other once shopping is done. As he approaches, Tychodox observes and comments that he arrived just then. The elf asks if he got good items, and Zeroth mentions buying a book and a staff. Praising the items, he asks where they were bought, making the knight a bit embarrassed. With curiosity, the mage comments how he managed to understand him even without words. Tychodox wonders why FC hasn't shown up yet, and suggests he might have gotten lost again. With a sword in hand, Chunshik bursts in shouting, wanting to show something to the group. Excited, he displays his new sword to his companions. Running up to them, our hero celebrates, saying he got great items to show. Watching, the girl turns her gaze to Kim and hears a comment from Zeroth about how he seems different now. Suspicious, Tychodox asks if Kim bought the sword for 500 gold, and he corrects her, saying it was 470. A nearby knight says the seller claimed it was worth 2,000 but sold it for 470, so he ended up buying it. The elf comments that he got scammed again, and Zeroth says he's way too easy to deceive. With a brief explanation, Zeroth informs that it's just the Viking sword, a common weapon not even worth 50 gold. Furious, the protagonist promises to find those crooks and teach them a lesson. With a resigned tone, the elf says they probably already ran off and that he lost this one. The spirit of battle knight shows the items he received and says some of them might be useful for the group. Chunshik thanks him for the items and says he's in his debt. With the group gathered, our hero asks if everyone is ready for what's coming. In front of a large gate, Kim suggests they enter the dungeon while Psychodox feels a bad omen. Curious, Chunshik wants to know where they are, and Zeroth informs him they've left the village and are heading toward the beetles. Not understanding, Kim asks what beetles are, and Zeroth offers to explain to his lord. While chewing a snack, the mage explains that the Golden Beetle Temple is the lowest level dungeon. In that type of competitive dungeon, teams face off by choosing between two available factions. The objective is simple: win the dungeon by capturing the golden beetle before the opposing team does. Impressed, the blonde elf praises Zeroth's explanation, and he replies that he hasn't even shown 10% of his abilities. With nostalgia, Chunshik comments that he used to enjoy hunting beetles and that the rhinoceros beetle was his favorite. The others find that preference for insects strange, and he questions whether kids nowadays still like those things. Our hero asks about the group's destination, and Psychodox replies that it's right in front of them. With his eyes fixed on the path, Kim wonders in confusion what she meant by that. Taking the easier route chosen by Psychodox, the group would follow the Relic Excavation Alliance path. As they walked, the hero noticed the camp and wanted to know who the old man was sleeping there among the tents. The girl looked briefly and suggested they not wake him, because if interrupted, he'd start explaining things, and it was best to avoid that. Ignoring the advice, Chunshik approached and nudged the old man, saying the sun was already too high to keep sleeping, and Psychodox immediately scolded him for doing that. With a confused and irritated expression, the old man woke up asking who he was and what he had to do with his rest. Firmly, the hero explained that he was there because he wanted to enter the Temple of the Golden Scarab. For a moment, the old man just stared at him in silence before doing anything. With surprising strength for someone his age, he shook Chunshik's hand, shocking everyone. Introducing himself as Braun Jones from the Relic Excavation Alliance, he said it was a pleasure to meet them. With a sigh, the old man complained that many just passed by without even hearing an explanation, and Kim wanted to know if that was common. With a hint of disdain, Psychodox commented that no one listens to NPCs and people prefer to read guides themselves since listening is a waste of time. With eyes shining, the old man begged them to listen to his story because there was something important he had to say. Not in much of a hurry and curious, the group decided to listen, and Braun celebrated enthusiastically. With everyone's attention on him, Braun announced that he would tell the story of the Temple of the Golden Scarab. As he explained that the temple was one of the oldest, the mage recognized that it matched the information from the wiki. During the conversation, Brond and the hero ended up getting sidetracked talking about fishing. Visibly irritated by the delay, Atsukidox crossed her arms impatiently. With a smile, the old man said it was fun to chat, and Chunshik agreed, saying he had fun too. Saying it was time to give something special, Brond offered a gift to the hero. In his hands, he placed a temple exploration kit with useful items like a tracker and detector. Surprised, Atsukidox wanted to know how he got that, since it was usually a quest item. With a curious tone, Zeroth explained that he had heard you could get the kit by talking to an NPC, and that it was news to him. Bidding farewell kindly, Brond wished them a safe return and thanked Chunshik for the conversation. With one last warning, he asked them to be careful with everything he mentioned about the temple. With a confident gesture, Kim assured him he had memorized everything, and the elf just rolled her eyes at that. As the atmosphere grew more serious, Brond Jones announced that he would now open the portal to the dungeon. In front of the group, a flaming red portal appeared leading to the Temple of the Golden Scarab. In a hurry, Thykidox shouted for Tuji and Jeros to hurry up and enter the portal. Once again, Brond wished everyone a safe return and added one final warning. Before disappearing, he shouted for them to watch out for the Deerhorn tribe inside the dungeon. With the excitement of entering in his eyes, Chunshik lit up for a moment as he crossed the portal. A strange sensation enveloped him, and the hero looked confused by it. Alone in a room, Kim wondered if that place was really the temple. He called out for Miss Jamin, Tuji, and Jeros, trying to figure out where everyone had gone. From the shadows, the lizard Kissino too emerged, and Chunshik was relieved to see him at his side. With alert eyes, he looked toward the corridor and tried to imagine what they were supposed to do in that place. A loud sound suddenly echoed, and the hero wondered what he had just heard. On the ground, the lizard began writhing, making strange choking noises, looking like he had eaten something off the floor. Kissino too thrashed around, and Chunshik scolded him, telling him to spit it out. With a sudden motion, the lizard spit out a small green frog with a moth on its back, leaving Kim stunned. Thanking the adventurer, the frog said they were alive thanks to him. Not really understanding, Chunshik wanted to know why a frog was talking to him, and the frog was offended by the comment. Introducing himself as Mameta, the guide of the temple from the Relic Excavation Alliance, the frog tried to maintain his composure. Explaining the grandeur and complexity of the temple, Mameta said that was why he was there to guide them. Chunshik asked if they just had to follow him, and the frog confirmed with a nod. Wanting to know about the rest of the group, Kim asked about the others, and Mameta replied that he thought they were nearby. With a small map, the frog showed that all paths led to the center of the temple. Commenting that he had almost been devoured, Mameta said he survived the danger thanks to the adventurer. Suddenly, a golden scarab appeared, and Chunshik wondered if that was really it. Excitedly, he ran after the golden scarab, which was the mission's objective. Quickly, he caught the golden scarab with his hand without hesitation. Holding the insect, the hero once again asked himself what it was. In the darkness, glowing eyes watched the protagonist closely. Without warning, a giant snake appeared, opening its mouth and lunging in for the attack. With a quick strike, it bit Chunshik on the neck, who screamed in pain and surprise. Lying on the ground, he felt something strange spreading inside him after the bite. In the dark, Mameta and Kissy No. 2 called out for him, worried. A system message appeared saying that Blazing Champion had died in the dungeon. As his vision darkened, Chunshik's eyes closed for a moment. Soon after, he opened his eyes with a confused and surprised expression. Worried, the frog wanted to know if he was conscious, and the hero tried to understand what had happened. Remembering the bite, Kim asked if he hadn't died, and the frog confirmed he had, but said he came back to life. Not fully understanding, Chunshik tried to figure out how he was standing again. Patiently, Mameta explained that in that dungeon, even if someone died, it wasn't permanent, and the group had 3 lives. Pointing to the life hearts, the frog showed that now only 2 lives remained for the group. Irritated, the hero complained that they should have warned him before so he'd be more careful, and the frog quickly apologized. With a sigh, Chunshik said that from now on he would be more cautious since the group had only 2 lives left. Seriously, he declared that it was time to move forward and find the golden scarab. Wanting to know the next step, Kim asked where they should go, and Mameta pointed out a path to follow. With cautious steps, Chunshik, Kissy, and Mameta advanced through a dark and narrow dungeon corridor. The silence felt far too strange to the hero, who soon commented that a monster should be appearing. Thinking out loud, Kim said that some creature had to show up for there to be a fight inside the dungeon. With his snout glued to the floor, the lizard sniffed something, and the hero asked what was wrong with him. Making confused sounds and pointing forward, Kissy No. 2 seemed to be trying to alert them about something, but Kim didn't understand. With a jump, the hero got startled, and Mameta raised the possibility of a trap or a monster ahead. Remembering the gift Bron Jones had given him, The hero thought of the trap detector. In a hurry, he took the device from his backpack and wondered how it worked, and it turned on by itself. On the screen, small green dots began flashing, showing something ahead in the dark corridor. With the information in front of his eyes, Kim concluded that it could only be indicating traps on the path. Looking at a fly on the wall, Kissy number 2 seemed to be preparing, and Kim wondered how they would get past that. Suddenly, the lizard ran ahead, and Chunshik shouted, asking where that punk thought he was going. Looking down the corridor, the hero could only say that kid was out of control and ran after him. Chunshik asked if there were no traps, and Nameta replied that something felt off. Confused by the situation, the protagonist couldn't understand what was happening. The corridor walls began to shake and move quickly toward them. The wall started closing in, and Chunshik shouted that it was trapping them. Nameta warned that if they didn't hurry, they'd be stuck, and Kim said he knew that. Kissy number 2 triggered something by stepping on the corridor. Desperate, Chunshik ran while the lizard chased the fly. He shouted for the lizard to wait as spikes emerged from the ground. At the last second, the protagonist jumped and yelled for the lizard to wait. Kissy number 2 finally reached the fly, stepped on it with his paw, and killed it. Panting, Chunshik and Nameta watched the lizard eating the fly he had caught. Kim punched the lizard on the head, asking why he had run off like that. Relieved, the protagonist asked if it was safe there and if everything was fine now. Chunshik looked to the side, suspicious about something he noticed. He asked the frog if he didn't hear a light shining from there, and Mameta agreed that it seemed like it. Chunshik heard a muffled thud and said he'd heard that sound before. With a snap, he recognized the sound and braced for what was coming. The protagonist ran toward the strange noise he had recognized earlier. As expected, he found the spirit of battle warrior healing while facing some mummies. The helmeted warrior looked surprised to be found there. The small mummies attacked the knight, who defended himself from their blows. Chunshik recognized the warrior and said he thought he had heard his sound somewhere. Kim asked if he had only been bitten since entering, and the protagonist found that amazing. The mummy screamed and lunged to attack the spirit of battle warrior with force. Our hero struck the mummy, who screamed in pain from the impact. Chunshik complained that the punk was getting in the way while the adults were talking. Our hero smiled and said he had gotten stronger too and could help now. The defeated mummy fell apart, and its spirit began to float out of it. Nameta forgot to mention that when a mummy dies, it turns into a ghost. The ghost of the mummy attacked Chunshik and Kissy No too, who both screamed in fright. The protagonist tried to defend against the ghost's attack, but his attack seemed useless against it. Kim looked at the ghost and wondered what that thing attacking them was. The protagonist was hit by the ghost and screamed in pain from the spectral attack. Nameta warned that ghost-type monsters take no damage from physical attacks. The cross on the Spirit of Battle Warrior's helmet glowed brightly with light. The warrior used the skill Let There Be Light, which blinded enemies and dealt damage to ghosts. The mummy's ghost screamed in pain and disintegrated from the warrior's holy light. Panting, Chunshik thanked the Spirit of Battle for the help once again. He commented that his debt to the warrior just kept growing and that they needed to find the others. Our hero asked the warrior if he had any clue where they could go next. Kim looked at the warrior and understood that he wasn't sure where to go. Suddenly, a red light flashed behind the warrior, signaling danger. Chunshik yelled for the Spirit of Battle to be careful, warning it was dangerous. A golden bullet flew quickly toward the Spirit of Battle warrior. Our hero blocked the bullet with his sword, sparks flying from the impact. The golden bullet fell to the ground after being deflected by the knight. Chunshik demanded to know who it was and ordered them to reveal their identity immediately. A double-barrel shotgun appeared, and the shooter said he wasn't just anyone. A hooded figure said he appreciated the skills, but that this was the end for him. Chunshik asked who those punks were, and Nameta said that if his guess was right. The frog revealed that they were the rival team competing against theirs in the temple dungeon. Nameta muttered that it looked like they had run into the opponents earlier than expected. He warned the adventurer to get ready to fight, and Kim shouted that this was dangerous. Our hero complained that shooting someone with a gun was seriously dangerous. The hooded figure with the shotgun just watched Chunshik's reaction silently. Kim analyzed the enemy, and the hooded one remarked that a one-handed sword warrior was a paladin tank. Chunshik asked if that meant they had to fight, and the enemy said they were at a disadvantage. A little ghost warned the adventurer to be careful anyway, since he couldn't be sure. A spirit from the Deer Horn tribe warned that even as beginners, they were part of the alliance and shouldn't be underestimated. The shooter told the spirit that if needed, their team had a trump card. The scene shifted focus to a stone wall in the dungeon. Chunshik asked if they really had to fight, and Nameta said it wasn't exactly mandatory. The frog explained that although rare, sometimes adventurers work together to get the scarab. Kim felt relieved they might not have to fight, but the little frog reminded him they were the ones who attacked first. Our hero said they didn't need to stay so on guard with them here. Chunshik stepped forward and said they didn't want to fight, proposing they help each other find the scarab. He showed the golden scarab tracker, an extra to help out. Our hero clasped his hands and said that with that, together they could succeed. The hooded shooter stayed silent. observing Chunshik's offer. Suddenly, the shooter fired his shotgun at point-blank range at the protagonist. Chunshik's eyes widened in shock from the enemy's unexpected shot. The warrior and Mameda screamed for the Sir Adventurer, who had been hit squarely. The flying frog said that was why he warned them to be careful with those guys. The shooter laughed and said there's a limit to talking nonsense, and if they won, the reward would be greater. He went on to say that if they really wanted to cooperate, they wouldn't have brought that item. The fallen bag revealed the liquid mass, an item that slows down enemies and turns them into monsters. Chunshik grumbled and said the shooter was smarter than he had initially thought. Kim said he had considered pretending to join them and then attack, but now the enemy already knew everything. The protagonist charged forward, shouting that they would go all in against them. The hooded shooter thought his attitude was very ignorant and got ready. He stepped firmly on the ground, prepared to confront our hero right there. The shooter fired his double-barreled shotgun once more at Chunshik. The protagonist was hit directly by the shotgun blast and screamed in pain. Kim and the shooter exchanged gunfire in the dark corridor of the temple dungeon. Chunshik complained that he couldn't get close because the shots kept pushing him back. The shooter mocked him, saying that was the difference in control between the two of them. He loaded a special red bullet, saying he'd give them a hot gift this time. The dragon's breath bullet, an incendiary projectile that burns enemies, was fired. Completely engulfed in flames, Chunshik's body twisted as a scream of intense pain tore through the air. Meanwhile, the frog Mameda observed that the healing was still ongoing, but the adventurer was already at a disadvantage. Suddenly, the pink-haired girl appeared and commented that he looked like a pure healer. Startled, Mameda and the warrior turned sharply at her sudden appearance behind them. With a calm look, the girl explained that she thought he was on the same path as her. The fighting spirit warrior just stared at her in confusion, trying to understand her comment. Laughing, the shooter remarked that he was pretty tough and even thought he was a wild boar. Kissy no. 2 launched fire, and the shooter commented that it wouldn't last long while wondering what would run out first. Despite the injuries and burns, Chunshik remained standing, bravely enduring the attacks. In his thoughts, he admitted that the enemy was right and that there was no hope if they kept going like that. Kim's gaze locked onto the enemy healer, and he realized he needed to find another way to win. The protagonist's focus shifted entirely to the girl, the healer of the enemy team. In a flashback, Isekai taught that if there's a healer, they must always be attacked first. Chunshik asked if the healer was like Mr. Fighting Spirit and received confirmation. With conviction, Isekai explained that if there's a healer, the team doesn't die no matter how much you attack. Curious, she asked what happens if the healer is taken out first, and the scene showed one being defeated. The elf smiled, saying that without healing it becomes much easier to kill the other players, and he agreed. With clarity, Kim realized that's why the demon girl targeted the fighting spirit from the start. Sikadox added that it was obvious, and he scolded her for always underestimating him. Back to the battle, the memory of Miss Jamin resurfaced, reinforcing the instruction to always focus on the healer first. Paying close attention, he noticed the girl wore a uniform similar to the fighting spirits and deduced she was the healer. The hooded shooter adjusted his shotgun with precision. Carefully, he aimed his double-barreled weapon at the chosen target, calling that moment the final. Something unexpected made him furrow his brow and hesitate for a second. On impulse, Chunshik ran toward the healer, and the shooter asked if he was running away in fear. Screaming, Kim replied that he wasn't afraid and that the person he was targeting was someone else. Without hesitation, he pointed at the pink-haired girl and declared that his target was the healer. The hero's impulsive act seemed foolish in the shooter's eyes. Wasting no time, the healer drew a flail with a chain and prepared for combat. In a quick motion, the flail's chain flew toward Chunshik, ready to strike. Surprised, the protagonist stared at the unexpected weapon from the enemy healer. The flail hit Chunshik squarely as the warrior, and the frog watched in shock. Skeptically, the shooter muttered that everyone thinks she's just a healer. With a firm voice, he revealed that Strawberry Mint Sherbet was actually a combat healer. The battle paladin known as Strawberry Mint Sherbet was a true support character. Even while being healed, Chunshik groaned in pain from his open wounds. Sarcastically, the shooter commented that if he thought Mint was a regular healer, he was completely mistaken. With a confident smile, Mint revealed that she was also a tank, since the group didn't have one, and the shooter agreed. Eyes fixed on the shooter, the combat healer said she needed to tell him something right then. She pointed at the fighting spirit warrior and remarked that he looked like a pure tank. Confused, the shooter asked if that meant he himself was a pure healer then. Still confused, he asks how someone that huge could not be a tank. Min explains she thought he was a healer and a tank, but now that it's clear he isn't, she suggests they shift focus to him. Chunshik looks at the spirit of battle and asks what that means and whether she wasn't supposed to be a healer. As the chaos intensifies, Kim realizes they're at a clear disadvantage and says the only option left is the plan. Visibly lost, the spirit of battle knight tries to understand Kim's words. With a faint smile, Chunshik looks at the knight and reveals what the plan is. Run like hell, and the two of them bolt, trying to escape the enemies. The enemies react in total shock, and the shooter yells for them to stop right there. Without looking back, Chunchik and the Spirit of Battle run as fast as they can, trying to get away. Mimeta asks the adventurer if he has any backup escape plan, only to hear that he doesn't. Irritated, the frog comments that they look like dead meat and says he thought the guy had it all figured out. Watching them flee, the shooter remarks that those punks are good at running, and he thought they were weak. Furious, the Deerhorn tribe spirit yells for them to stop running and fight like men. Panting, Chunchik says there's no other way and that Kissy no. 2 will have to hand it over now. The shooter activates the skill Perfect Aim, guaranteeing a 100% hit on the next shot. Without hesitation, he takes aim at the healer Spirit of Battle, determined to strike him first. The shot lands squarely on the knight's back, and he lets out a scream of pain. Desperate, Chunchik shouts the name of Lord Spirit of Battle, clearly worried about him. Coldly, the shooter reveals that it was the anesthetic bullet prepared for exactly this situation. Our hero asks if he's okay and calls the opponents a bunch of bad guys. With a victorious tone, the hooded shooter tells them to give up the fight now. He continues saying there's no more bright future for them, only despair. Yelling, Chunchik calls for Pippo number 2, saying the time to act is now. Leaping, the lizard charges at the healer mint, ready to attack her. With a quick move, the combat healer grabs the little lizard by surprise. Kissy no. 2 is caught by the backpack, held in the firm grip of Battle Paladin Mint. Curious, the healer asks what is that stupid-looking lizard, thinking she's seen it before. In the blink of an eye, Kissy no. 2's eyes sparkle as he stares at the healer. Surprise washes over Strawberry Mint Sherbet as she looks at the lizard. Blushing, she admits he's cute, and the shooter asks if she's being serious, Lady Mint. In a sudden move, the lizard with sparkling eyes attacks the combat healer. A green slime splashes onto Mint's face, and she's left shocked by what just happened. The shooter yells her name while the lizard runs back toward our hero. The hooded man asks where she's looking, reminding her that the real opponent is him. With determination, Chunchik jumps and strikes at the shooter with all his strength using his sword. The double-barreled shotgun blocks the blow, and the clash continues fiercely. Our hero complains about the strong defense of the hooded enemy as he searches for an opening. With a smirk, the shooter says he's terrible at learning things quickly. He fires again, saying that with slow moves it'll be impossible to hit him. Shots from the enemy's shotgun hit Chunchik several times. Fuming, he concludes he needs to close the distance to have any chance against the shooter. While trying to think of a way to get close, he still can't come up with a good idea. Out of patience, Kim says he doesn't know what to do and that his headache is getting worse. With a sudden decision, he chooses to use the strength in his legs to try something new. Leaping forward with a burst of momentum, Chunchik believes it might be enough. In a brief moment of focus, he finally seems to have an idea. Looking to the side, he wonders about the strange sensation that's rising. With a quick leap, he dashes at high speed toward the enemy. The hooded shooter is left speechless by Chunchik's speed. In midair, he spins, preparing to strike with all his might. The hero's image reflects in the shooter's eyes the moment before impact. A strong shoulder blow hits the enemy right in the stomach. Shocked by the unexpected hit, the hooded shooter can't hide his surprise. A cloud of smoke rises from the impact between the two. Kim asks what just happened and says it felt like he was flying. Still confused, he wonders if he used a magic contract without realizing it. Groaning in pain, the shooter admits he underestimated Chunchik, thinking he was just a rookie. Chunchik wants to know how he feels after taking that hit, and the shooter curses at him. Angrily, the enemy says they're forgetting something, and Kim wants to know what it is. In a direct command, the shooter calls for Mint to finish him, and she appears behind Chunchik. The hero is startled at the sudden appearance of the healer. On Mint's face, a green slime seems to alter her behavior. A voice asks what finish him even means and suggests she might be a hybrid healer. With wide eyes, Mint reacts to the mysterious person's words. Even so, the figure insists that a healer is still a healer. Frightened, Chunchik points at her in disbelief at the revelation. With a smile on her face, Psychodox appears and greets the blazing champion. A dark red aura surrounds Psychodox when she says the word insect. With daggers ready and a cold gaze, she utters the word slash. Excited, Chunchik celebrates finally finding Nis Jamin, and a system message pops up. Psychodox says she was curious about where he was and comments that it looks like a win-win. Kim praises her skills, saying that even without being clever, she's amazing in the game. Zeroff shows up, stating that he's there too, and the hero calls out to Jeros and Pippo. Explaining that he found Jamin earlier, Zeroff says they were going to look for the others after talking to the lizard. Happy, the hero thanks that Kissy didn't run away and says everything was part of his plan. The elf suggests that now that everyone is together, it's time to head to the center. But first, she proposes they take down that Kukurupingpon nearby. Respectfully, the spirit of the Deerhorn tribe suggests that the adventurer fall back since they're at a disadvantage. The hooded shooter clenches his fists and admits he knows that and is aware of the situation. Throwing a smoke bomb, he says he'll pay them back for this humiliation and tells them to wait and see. Coughing, Chunchik complains about the rival's rudeness and asks if they shouldn't go after him. Meanwhile, Psychedox shakes the fighting spirit warrior, trying to wake him from the stun. Noticing that he's finally awake, Zeroth watches the situation curiously. Still confused, the warrior hears Zeroth explain that he might have been hit by a mez. Impatient, the elf complains about all the explanations, and Kim asks where Mameda is. Coming out from a corner, Mameda asks if they were looking for him, and Kim stares at him suspiciously. The Deer Horn tribe spirit accuses Mameda of betrayal, and the frog appears nervous. Surprised, Psychedox asks if that's really Mameda, and Chunshik wants to know if she knows him. Confirming that she does, she asks if he can imagine how many times she's already cleared that dungeon. The elf seems to have an idea, but isn't willing to tell Chunshik just yet. Bored, Kim says she's tormenting them, and she replies that she can't spoil things for a newbie. According to Mameda, the crisis was avoided, and with everyone together, it's time to move quickly. He says he'll lead the way, and the blonde girl comments that she already knows the path. Chunshik explains to Psychedox that he used spatial control magic, and she reacts with surprise. He says he flew off like a rocket after bumping into the enemy, and tries to understand what happened. Frightened, the elf admits she didn't know that was even possible. Zeroth suggests the hero may have used a skill, and the elf agrees with the hypothesis. Not remembering using a skill, Kim is surprised, and Psychedox is shocked by the revelation. She says the ideal is to use skills to level up faster and hunt more efficiently. When he asks how to use a skill, Chunshik hears from her that he just needs to draw the image in his head. Suddenly, a dark aura surrounds the elf, and the protagonist is intrigued by it. Nervously, Kim watches Psychedox's power right there in front of them. In an instant, she activates the Shadow Step skill and appears behind Chunshik. Outraged, he complains about her lack of manners in pulling a knife like that in front of an adult. She explains that with higher level and proficiency, better and stronger skills are unlocked. Kim understands why he was able to use a skill, and why the elf still avoids high-level ones. Remembering Nangshik's skill, he wonders if he'll be able to use it too later on. Ready to move on, the group gets excited, and Psychedox sighs at their enthusiasm. With his fist raised, Chunshik declares that his passion is burning and that it's time to level up. Zeroth praises his lord as always, and the girl just sighs. An arrow is fired toward the group, and they brace themselves for battle. Surrounded by skeletal creatures, they regroup in a dark room of the dungeon. Standing heroically atop a pile of bones from the defeated monsters, the group strikes a pose. Commenting that following Miss Jamin's orders makes everything easier, Zeroth smiles with satisfaction. Psychedox boasts that he already knows all the strategies and says they've reached the center. Wide and golden, the golden scarab dungeon reveals itself before them. With shining eyes, the group admires the beauty of the place, and the waifu finds everything very fun. Smiling, the elf says that from there they will proceed to the next step. Pointing at the ground, someone asks if that right there is the exit. With confidence, the blonde guy says it's a piece of cake, and his companion is impressed by the size. Grinning, he comments that the other team hasn't even shown up in that place yet. Upon recognizing Chunshik and Psychedox, he asks if they are his opponents. Surprised, Kim and the elf stare at the opposing group that has just arrived. Our hero identifies him as the guy who remains silent during the interview. Angrily, the blonde guy raises his sword and declares that it'll be a duel, and he's going to defeat them. The hooded shooter asks Carlins to wait a moment. He reminds him they're in the Guardian's domain, and fighting there would bring penalties. Agreeing, Carlins' companion states it's better not to fight at that moment. Not understanding anything, Chunshik lets out a confused sigh. Even so, the protagonist supports the decision to avoid fighting right then. Carlin says it would be laughable for an elite to get excited over so little. Annoyed, Kim asks why he talks so much, and Psychedox tells him to just ignore it. Mameda announces that they've reached the first trial and says he'll explain everything right there. According to Zeroth, the Scarab's guardians will appear in Phase 2, and if they win, they get the Scarab. Coldly, Psychedox says she doesn't need any of that, and warns him to be careful. Impressed, he compliments the clarity of her instructions. Both teams now gathered in the temple center wait for what's to come. With the ground shaking, Chunshik wonders what's happening. Frightened, the spirit of Battle Warrior and Zeroth scream at the same time. In an instant, a gigantic creature emerges from the ground. Before both teams appears a massive stone guardian with glowing green eyes. The temple guardian announces that it will begin the judgment of the adventurers there. Not knowing what to do, Chunshik asks if they really have to fight that thing. Mameda announces that the first dungeon trial has begun right there. Explaining that it is the Golden Scarab Guardian, he says they need to pass the test. Worried, Kim asks what happens if they fail the trial. With a grim look, Mameda replies that they will die a miserable death. Annoyed, Psychedox says it doesn't matter whether it's a test or not. It's simple. According to her, all they have to do is keep their heads straight and not worry. The warrior wants to know what happens if they fail, and she replies that it won't happen. Commenting on the rogue, the shooter says she seems like an alt of a good player and knows the mission. Mint gets nervous, and he warns that they need to be careful with her. With an imposing voice, the Guardian says he will explain the test simply for both teams. Moving quickly, the Guardian's hand creates a stone pillar that divides the room in half. With a serious expression, Nomeda announces that this will be the first trial. Tense, Chun-Shik and the group wait to find out what the challenge will be. The Guardian announces that the trial will be a speed quiz. Calmly, Mameda explains that it's a speed-based quiz and whoever presses first gets to answer. Zeroth adds that direct damage is not allowed, but crowd control is. Determined, Exakidox says they must win and that she'll join the first round to assess the opponents. With glowing eyes, the Guardian announces the first question of the quiz about the Golden Scarab dungeon. Getting ready to run, both teams wait attentively for the question to be asked. Before the question is even finished, there's already a complaint from Kim saying they're running way too fast. Zeroth comments that Miss Jamin has always been a bit faster, and that's why she reached the button. Carnes from the opposing team complains, saying that if things go on like this, they might lose the quiz. Meanwhile, the pink-haired healer throws something and asks if she couldn't use that bullet while running. With a confident smile, Psychidoc says that it's no big deal and thanks her for the easy win. Suddenly, the flail thrown by the healer hits the elf squarely, making her scream in pain and surprise. Our hero complains that direct damage is not allowed and accuses the healer of cheating. The healer meant responsible for the hit is detained for violating the quiz rules. With that, the Guardian announces that the point for the round goes to the protagonist's team. Kim's group celebrates and encourages everyone to keep it up, while the opposing shooter looks frustrated. Smiling excitedly, the protagonist announces that it's his turn to answer the second question. Meanwhile, someone runs toward the button, and Chunchik wonders what's going on over there. With a mocking tone, Carlins dashes ahead saying he'll go first and calls Chunchik sloppy. Our hero then decides to use his spatial control magic and focuses on drawing the image. Eyes locked on the goal, Chunchik gets ready to use his ability, saying he's ready. In a burst of speed, he shoots across the corridor, leaving a trail of glowing energy on the ground. The enemy shooter yells that he won't let him pass that easily, while Psychodox warns him of the advance. Carlins gets annoyed, saying they can't even get a single question right, and the shooter praises him for trying. Even at high speed, Chunchik starts to wonder if he's going too fast. Soon after, he crashes hard, and the impact is felt by both the fighting spirit warrior and Zeroth. The crash happens when the protagonist slams into a stone pillar at the end of the corridor. Even with a red face, he celebrates the fact that he pressed the button before the opponent. The Guardian confirms the button press and asks what the adventurer's answer will be. Confused, Chunchik starts wondering what the question was again. Annoyed, Carlins calls him unbearable, and Kim replies saying he doesn't know either. The Guardian observes the competitiveness between the groups and decides to repeat the question one more time. The question is about who co-founded Novice and what is the name of the company's current CEO. Chunchik answers with his own name, and the Guardian confirms it's correct. Kim celebrates excitedly and wonders who made that suggestion, and even without knowing, he promises to give them a bonus. The rival group thinks the question is awful, and Carlin starts to doubt whether Kim Chunchik actually plays the game. Sekidox asks why he has such a strange expression even though he won that round. With the score at 2-1, the shooter answers Horned Bear for the question about the monster. Zeroth answers Lure Civilization for the question about the temple's creator, and the score goes to 3-2. After that, the enemy team gets the camp location right and ties the score at 3-3. The Guardian announces that the final question has arrived and the game is tied. Confident, Exakidox believes in victory, while the other team's sorceress looks nervous. Chunchik and Zeroth encourage the elf, saying she can win this final round. Smiling confidently, the girl states that she's cleared that dungeon so many times she knows everything. She taunts the enemy sorceress, saying she can sit and rest because she's going to lose. In a quick move, the elf shoots ahead, saying she'll answer first, and the sorceress sighs. Sekidox reaches the button and states that Novice World is a VR-based game. The Guardian then asks what VR means, and she falls completely silent. With a blank stare, the elf wonders if there was really a question like that. She tries to remember what VR stands for while mentally repeating the question. Zeroth finds her silence strange and asks why she's frozen, and Chunchik thinks she doesn't know the answer. Doubt grows in the elf's mind. She wonders if she should take a risk or if getting it wrong would cost them the win. Before Exakidox can decide anything, the enemy sorceress quickly presses the button. Panting, she answers that VR means virtual reality, and the Guardian confirms the answer. With that, the Guardian announces the sorceress's team as the winner of the final round. Completely shocked, the blonde elf remains open-mouthed at the unexpected defeat. The sorceress celebrates, taunting the elf for not knowing something so simple. She keeps mocking Xekidox, saying she was so confident and now can barely speak. Carlins congratulates Yuna for the win while the sorceress keeps mocking their opponents. Unable to react, the elf just stares into space, not knowing how to respond to the loss. Chunchik, Zeroth, and the fighting spirit warrior show disappointment at the quiz result. The elf's gaze expresses total disbelief and denial at what just happened. A flashback shows 3 former teammates abandoning the elf during a past mission. Xekidox tries to say something, but the words don't seem to come out properly. The Guardian announces that all Golden Scarab trials have been completed. The winning team celebrates, and Karln shouts in joy, unable to hide his excitement. With authority, the Guardian commands them to ascend to the highest level where the scarab resides. In a corner of the room, Karln mocks Chunshik, calling him a loser, and he starts getting irritated. The teasing continues with Karln saying he fits right in there and telling him to go suck his thumb. Worried, Mameta mentions that his greatest fear is about to come true, and Kim doesn't understand. The frog explains that adventurers who fail the first trial must pass the second one. Without delay, the Guardian unsheathes his massive golden sword, which shines intensely. With a cruel smile, he declares that they must prove their worth to move forward. Chunshik's group takes position and prepares to face the second trial of the Temple Guardian. The only way to pass will be by defeating the Guardian himself, and the trial of strength begins. With a sudden spin, the Guardian attacks with his sword, aiming directly at the group. With agility, Chunshik and his allies dodge the powerful blow from the Guardian. Zeroth reads in the guide that the losing team must fight the Guardian, and he finds the game pattern simple. The reading continues with a warning to avoid the solar breath and a note about the weak spot. According to the mage, the weak spot is the gem located on top of the creature's head. Kim asks if it's that glowing green thing and wonders how they'll hit something so big. Zeroth says they don't need to worry and that this time he'll actively join the fight. With shining eyes, he summons his shadow creature to help in the decisive battle. From the darkness emerges Shadow Lord Berkias level 1, surrounded by a purple aura. With excitement, Zeroth celebrates the successful summon and hopes it will be enough. He declares that now he'll show his true abilities in this boss fight. The command is given for Berkias to attack with explosive black flame, aiming at the Guardian. The impact hits the Guardian, and Zeroth asks if it worked while receiving praise from the Lord. Chunshik tells them to keep up the pace, and Zeroth agrees with the strategy, thrilled. The Guardian's red eyes shine, and he glares at the group with a furious expression. A yellow light begins to glow in his mouth, and the mage warns that it's the solar breath. Zeroth yells for the Flame Champion to dodge the attack while warning everyone of the danger. He advises them to run to the edges of the room before the attack hits full force. A blast of golden energy explodes across the hall, and Chunshik screams in desperation. Moments later, a system message reports the death of Lord Dark Archangel Jeros. Desperate, Kim looks for Miss Jamin and asks where she is in that critical moment. He finds Taxaikidox paralyzed with fear, standing in the middle of the boss room. Chunshik runs to her and asks what she's doing standing there in such danger. He grabs her by the shoulders and yells for her to snap out of it, because the moment is serious. The elf says she didn't mean to mess up on purpose, and Kim doesn't understand what she means. The Spirit of Battle Knight watches the scene with a shocked expression at the danger they're in. Suddenly, he pushes Chunshik away with all his strength, startling the protagonist. Confused, he asks what Lord Spirit of Battle is doing right then. The warrior uses all his superhuman strength to hold back the Guardian's massive claws. Chunshik yells, calling out to the warrior who trembles while holding the weight of the claws. Kim tries to hear what he's saying but can't understand, and the warrior continues resisting. With effort, the Spirit of Battle tries to protect the others by holding the monster's claw. The Guardian retaliates and strikes with his golden sword, hitting the warrior squarely in the chest. The impact throws the warrior across the room, gravely wounding him. Another punch from the Guardian hits his side, launching him even farther across the hall. Chunshik tells Kissy to take care of Jamin while he runs to the fallen warrior. Kneeling down, he asks if the Spirit of Battle is okay and if he can move. The warrior hands something to Chunshik, and he asks if it's time to take that now. Tense and worried, our hero observes the critical situation they're in. With the dagger firmly in her hands, the elf charges while the lizard wraps tightly around her legs and back. Clinging to her, the lizard seems determined to choke her mercilessly. With glowing eyes, he sinks his teeth into the elf's leg with intensity. A scream of pain and surprise escapes her at the unexpected bite. With a strong punch to the lizard's head, she asks what he thinks he's doing there. After the blow, the lizard simply points to a small pile of ashes on the ground. With a look of disappointment towards Zeroth, the elf Psychidox appears distraught over what happened. She admits she made yet another mistake and that everything would have been different if she had gotten it right. Behind her, the Guardian approaches silently, ready to strike with full force. There on the floor, the girl and the lizard remain while the pet groans in pain. The Temple Guardian's arm rises menacingly above the fallen elf. In an instant, a bright light bursts through the area, accompanied by sparks and a massive impact. Confused by what just happened, the elf turns to the side searching for answers. A circular energy barrier surrounds the elf and the lizard, shielding them from the blow. Before them, our hero appears with his energy shield activated and a firm stance. With a fierce roar, the Temple Guardian glares at the group gathered before him. Chunshik informs Miss Jamin that he can't hold on any longer and they need to defend themselves quickly. Curious, the elf asks where the helmets and shields came from, and he replies they're special items. He explains that Mr. Fighting Spirit granted many objects, and he picks some useful ones. Feeling guilty for her mistake during the test, the elf Psychidox apologizes to the group. Firmly, Chunshik asks how long she's going to keep mourning that. If she's truly sorry, he demands that she say how to defeat the enemy. Not knowing the answer, she simply admits she doesn't know how to beat the Guardian. With a determined smile, she states they just need to trust her, because everything will be fine. As the Guardian strikes with his claw, Chunshik cries out while blocking the blow. Our hero counterattacks with sword and shield, using all his strength in the motion. Even so, the blade seems to have little effect on the Temple Guardian's body. While running, Psychidox and Kim argue whether it's really possible to defeat him. With a shout, the elf warns that random attacks won't work and they need to hit the weak points. Zeroth suggests it might be the gem on its head, and the elf confirms but says it's already cracked. Chunshik recalls Jiro's warned them about it and mentions the spot is still hot. The elf then asks how they'll break the gem while the Guardian advances menacingly. Kim wants to know if there isn't a sharp weapon and how long they'll have to keep running. The elf orders the blazing champion to lure the enemy with his shield as a distraction. Ready for battle, Chunshik accepts the plan and positions himself with his shield raised. With a defiant scream, he taunts the Guardian to hit him with everything it's got. Facing the enemy, the protagonist holds his ground in the clash. The Guardian leaps with force and slams down a destructive blow directly onto Chunshik. The impact hits him squarely, and he groans in pain from the power of the strike. With precise timing, Psychidox leaps onto the Guardian as Kim calls out for Miss Jamin. With agility, she drives her daggers into the green gem on the enemy's head. The crack in the gem deepens under the elf's accurate strike. A cry of pain echoes through the temple as the Guardian is hit in its weak point. Confused by the outcome, Chunshik tries to understand if the strike worked. The elf confirms she hit exactly the monster's vulnerable spot. She reveals that there are other gems, and breaking them will completely paralyze it. As the Guardian roars with rage, the elf says she must be careful to the end. A golden glow radiates from a staff with intense, powerful energy. Intrigued by what she sees, the blonde elf watches golden wings emerge from her back. The skill Wings of Blessing grants her the power to fly for a limited time. With the golden staff, the fighting spirit warrior had prepared that enhancement. The elf reiterates that the gem is a weak point and looks relieved to see him back. Casually, Chunshik comments that he's already used to the quick leap skill. Surrounded by a blue aura, he prepares to use the new ability against the enemy. In a swift charge, the protagonist strikes the gem on the Guardian's arm with precision. Psychidox excitedly celebrates the blazing champion's success and is impressed. With a strange gesture, she wonders what's happening to her body. Meanwhile, the fighting spirit watches everything next to a cloud of smoke. The girl complains that low-level skills are unreliable because of their short duration. Even so, she smiles and says that with the wings, she feels like she can win easily. The Temple Guardian prepares once again, raising his enormous threatening sword. With a powerful move, he punches toward the healer warrior with fury. Chunshik yells to Mr. Fighting Spirit that now is the time to act. Kim urges him to quickly destroy the green gem in front of him. Visibly hesitant, the warrior asks what he should do at that moment. Despite the hesitation, he strikes the gem with a strong, well-aimed blow. Surprised, Chunshik and Psychidox watch the impact of the attack on the Guardian. With a final scream, the Temple Guardian rides as all its gems are destroyed. Even weakened, the monster begins preparing its powerful solar breath. With violence, it unleashes the golden blast at the gathered group. Chunshik warns Miss Jamin about the imminent danger of the explosion. The temple room fills with a golden light that erupts with devastating force. Desperate, he calls out for Miss Jamin as he sees her hit by the attack. With an agile move, the elf leaps through the smoke, escaping the final blow. She yells for the spirit of battle to activate the wing ability again. Though confused, the warrior sees golden wings appear on the elf's back. In flight, she charges toward the Guardian, ready for a decisive strike. With a war cry, she launches herself with her daggers drawn at the enemy. The golden wings shine brightly as she cuts through the skies. The Guardian watches intently as the elf approaches from above. Kissy no. Tu jumps onto her back and holds on with unexpected strength. With a jolt, he bites the elf's head, and she complains about the pain. Moments later, the lizard sinks his teeth into the gem and seems to prepare for something bigger. With resolve, Kissy no. Tu fires a fireball straight at the Guardian's head. The explosion hits the gem, causing significant damage to its structure. Chunshik, Psychidox, and the Spirit of Battle watch in shock at the lizard's feet. The main gem completely shatters from the fire's impact. Deep cracks spread through the Guardian's shattered gem. In agony, the Guardian lets out a final roar before collapsing, defeated. Rising again in pain, Zeroth gets up and grumbles about the situation. Sarcastically, he says that getting hit is part of his messy charm. Running frantically, he yells for his lord to wait because he's going to save him. Felled and paralyzed, the Temple Guardian lies motionless on the ground. Arriving at the scene, Zeroth asks if they'd already done what was needed, and Kim is glad to see him back. Relieved, Chunshik celebrates the victory and emphasizes that teamwork was essential. Curious, Kissy no. Tu asks about himself, and the protagonist returns the items to the spirit of battle. Kim asks if the warrior can really keep the items he received. Pointing to something, Zeroth asks everyone to look in that direction. Inside the guardian's mouth, an intense golden light begins to shine. Emerging from it, a small light fairy congratulates the group on their feat. The fairy confirms they've defeated the guardian and are now qualified for the next destination. Before them, a pedestal is revealed with the orb of power as the challenge reward. Mameda appears, identifying the object, leaving Kim puzzled by his sudden arrival. The frog explains that the orb is a treasure of the guardian and can only be used by guides. The protagonist wonders if the item is really necessary and hears that it isn't. Kim suggests that for now they should just keep it, and Mameda calmly reinforces the decision. Curious, he asks why Miss Jamin looks downcast, standing away from the group. The elf apologizes, believing the mistake she made earlier caused all of it. Already annoyed, Chunshik asks if she's still going to stay stuck in that regret. Our hero also questions why she keeps insisting on bringing it up. With eyes clouded by frustration, Saikidox yells that if there was a mistake, it's her fault. Kim tries to calm her, saying no one is perfect and everyone makes mistakes. Gently, he says that no one is judging her and that everyone is okay now. The protagonist adds that without her help, they might not have gotten this far. Smiling with her sharp teeth, she shows newfound confidence and determination. Excited, the girl celebrates that her contribution was essential to their success, and Kim agrees. She takes the lead and promises that from now on, they can leave everything to her. Surprised, the protagonist finds it impressive how quickly she changed. With a wide smile, the blonde elf shows renewed confidence before the group. In a flashback, the image of the smiling boy with a cute puppy takes form. Chunshik's eyes take on a serious shine, as if something important is coming. The memories continue, showing the boy hugging the small dog in his arms. The scene shifts to reveal the boy, now older, with a sad and lonely expression. With Kissy No, 2 on his shoulder, Chunshik seems to reflect deeply on something from the past. The next flashback shows a young man from behind at a funeral filled with white flowers. With a grim face, his eyes glow red as he stares at the scene. Among the attendees, a man in a suit with a dark face and white eyes watches in silence. Chunshik's gaze reveals a moment of deep introspection about everything. Saikidox's voice calls the flame champion, ordering him to hurry up instead of just standing there. The guardian finally asks if all preparations are complete so they can ascend the altar. The elf cheerfully comments that this is really fun and tells everyone to hold on tight, while the others glance at each other in confusion. With wide eyes of shock, Chunshik realizes what is about to happen. With a collective scream, the group panics as the altar shoots up at high speed to the highest floor of the temple. During the ascent, Saikidox shouts excitedly, finding it all fun, while the others scream for help in the chaos. The platform spirals upward rapidly, surrounded by the golden glow of the temple. At the top of the temple, an immense and completely empty circular arena awaits them. With a smile, the elf comments that it was fun, and that thrill never gets old, no matter how many times. Remembering that the other team went up first, Mameda wonders if they shouldn't be more alert. Wasting no time, the group gets ready to move forward as Mameda instructs them to all stick together. Before a massive staircase, the adventurers stop, panting, wondering if they're already too late. With wide eyes, Chunshik looks ahead, surprised by what he sees. The top of the Golden Scarab Temple reveals a gigantic, radiant golden pyramid. With a gesture, Mameda points to the top, saying that's where the Golden Scarab is, and Kim wonders where the other group is. Pointing to one side, the protagonist asks if the scarab might have gone that way. Suddenly, the Golden Scarab lands right on Chunshik's nose, and he screams in fright. Excited, Saikidox recognizes the scarab and yells to catch it, while the other team silently observes. Annoyed, Carlins from the rival group complains about the arrival of the new opponents, and the blonde elf lets out a sigh of relief. Quickly, the golden scarab takes flight toward the top of the pyramid, leaving everyone on alert. With a command, Carlins orders Yunha to climb the stairs and catch the scarab. Meanwhile, Mint and Saikidox lock eyes, preparing for the decisive battle. In a leap, both charge forward, exchanging powerful blows midair with precision and fury. With irony, Mint taunts the blonde, telling her not to underestimate her for being a healer, and the elf notices something worrying. Firmly, Chunshik says he'll handle the situation and orders the others to advance to the top. Panting, the hooded shooter watches the scene and considers it all too dangerous. The Deerhorn tribe spirit appears and asks the adventurer for the orb of power so he can help. With a quick motion, the spirit takes the orb from the shooter's hands, ready to use it. An intense light begins to emanate from the artifact as the spirit prepares to act. With resolve, he tells the outsiders that they'll now feel the wrath of the Deerhorn tribe. From the flash, a monstrous serpent reemerges, making Kim's group recoil in fear. Not understanding, Chunshik asks if the game has turned into just monsters, and Mameda urgently calls him. In a rush, the frog asks for the orb of power he had received, saying it's the only way to help. Seriously, Kim looks at Mameda before handing over the orb, trusting that he knows what to do. As he holds the orb, Mameta lets it slip and fall from the hero's hand. Quickly, Kissy number 2 swallows the artifact before anyone can react. The small lizard begins to grow and change form, gaining strength with each second. In despair, Chunshik screams at the unexpected transformation of Kissy number 2. Surrounded by a glowing light, the lizard keeps growing, and the hero wonders if the light around him is fading. Chunshik questions if the huge snake is from the enemy team, and Psychidox confirms with uncertainty. While Mint and the blonde elf continue fighting, Chunshik explains he was going to give the orb to Mameta, but something went wrong. He explains that Pippo number 2 ended up eating the artifact, leaving the elf in shock. Doubtfully, Kim wonders if the lizard is okay after ingesting it like that. Annoyed, the elf asks what they can do now, dodging another attack from the healer. Angrily, Mint threatens Exakidox, saying that if she looks away, she'll lose her eyes. Climbing the stairs, Chunshik calls for Miss Jamin, offering help in the fight. The colossal summoned serpent stares down Chunshik's group with predatory intent. With its mouth wide open and full of fangs, the creature prepares to attack the adventurers. Glowing intensely from its mouth, Kissy number 2 stares down the serpent as an equal. Still growing, surrounded by a glowing aura, the mascot transforms completely. Now in giant form, the new Kissy number 2 faces the serpent, ready to fight. Surprised, the serpent wonders how a support character's pet became so powerful. With its mouth wide open, the lizard roars, asserting dominance and strength over its opponent. At the top of the temple, the two giant monsters collide in an epic battle. Without hesitation, Chunshik says to leave the serpent to Pippo number 2 while they climb. The hooded shooter appears and orders everyone to stop there, saying he'll handle the rest. With the dragon breath bullet, he threatens to set all enemies on fire. Looking around, he realizes no one is there and wonders where everyone went. Kissy number 2, now in giant form, appears and strikes the shooter with a devastating side blow. Confused, the elf asks the flame champion what that creature is and how it changed like that. Worried, Chunshik asks if Miss Jamin is okay while she's still facing the healer. Even struggling, Psychidox says to avoid the enemies because dying is still a risk. The hero remembers that each one only has 2 lives and now only 1 remains. Outraged, the elf yells at Kim for not saying that earlier and says if she dies, the game is over. Chunshik begs the spirit of battle and Jeros not to die under any circumstance. Furiously, he declares that if they die, he'll end them himself and charges into danger. A gigantic explosion of flames engulfs the protagonist, who screams as he's hit. Smiling with confidence, Yumna says that even without being able to run, her magic is enough. Karlns glares at her and says she dares speak of sorcery in front of him in that place. With authority, Zeroth declares he will show true summoning magic. With a swift gesture, he summons Berkias once more. Karlns' companion screams that Yuna can't lose to a basic summoning skill. With power, Yuna summons the spirit of Flames Tapnas to face Berkias. In the air, the two summons clash, exchanging blows wreathed in fire and black flames. In a hurry, Zeroth tells his lord to leave that fight to him and go up the stairs quickly. Annoyed, Karlns complains about the stairs and says everything there is irritating. He yells at Chunshik, asking why he doesn't follow the theme like a proper loser would. Firmly, Kim asks if he thinks he's better just because he works at a big company and stares him down. Our hero says he doesn't know where he works, but the kind of person he is crystal clear. Karlns gets angry and tells him to take that back, saying insulting him is allowed. With his sword in hand, he prepares an attack with bluish energy, saying one should never insult the company he works for. Recognizing the move, Chunshik realizes it's the same ability Nyangshik used before. With force, a blast of blue energy shoots from Karlns' sword toward Kim. With his shield, the protagonist defends himself, but is thrown back hard. Karlns' hand glows again with blue energy, and he prepares another attack. A new blast hits Chunshik directly, making him scream in pain. With a grim expression, Karlns positions himself to deliver the final blow to his enemy. With a quick dash, he strikes Chunshik's chest with his sword. Wounded, our hero groans in pain while the opponent says that company is no joke. Angrily, Karlns asks if he has any idea how hard he worked to get in there. Proudly, he states he's different from those who hide, and his life is a success. Annoyed, Chunshik says he just wants to know what this big company is anyway. Smiling smugly, Karlns reveals he works at Novus Corporation, the #1 in gaming. With disdain, he asks if Chunshik didn't hear him and repeats that it's Novus, creator of the game. Curious, Kim asks which department he's in, while the lizard and snake battle in the background. Karlns replies that he's in management support, and Chunshik mutters the name Park Sang-gil. Laughing, the hero says he imagined the company would be bigger, irritating his rival even more. With sarcasm, Kim asks if he knows who the CEO of Novus is, and Karlns confirms it's Kim Chunshik. Smiling, the protagonist says he knows that CEO's name very well then. Firmly, Chunshik asks what would happen if he himself were that CEO, and Karlns approaches, suspicious. With a serious look, Karlns stares at Kim, asking what kind of nonsense he's saying now. Carl's eyes shine intensely as he stares seriously at the hero. With a tired sigh, he comments that even though he dressed well, the interview was way too hard. Someone asks why he's sighing so much and if the nerves were because of the interview. Startled, Carl's notices the interviewer, who invites him to relax a bit right there. In a gentle tone, the interviewer apologizes for the pressure, saying that even so, he did well. Internally, Carl's is surprised, thinking he expected someone harsher, but the man is better than he imagined. Praising his youthful spirit, the interviewer says he would hire him on the spot. With a smile, Carl's asks what would happen if he were the CEO he admires so much. Suddenly appearing, Secretary Jung asks if she was gone too long from the room. The interviewer reminds her that there are many things to be approved and invites her to come in. Smiling, he says goodbye to Carl's, calling him young friend and suggesting they meet again sometime. In shock, Carl's stammers, asking if he's really the CEO. Our hero confirms that yes, he is CEO Kim Chunchik, leaving Carl's even more incredulous. It seems impossible to Carl's, who remembers mocking the protagonist and calling him a loser. Desperate, he apologizes for not recognizing him, and Kim responds that there's nothing to worry about, it's just a game. Holding nothing back, the protagonist explains that he never told anyone at the company who he was in the game, and that this kind of situation might happen. With a formal posture, Carl's introduces himself as Oh Sung-tak from management support and asks if the CEO recognizes him. Chunchik, disguising well, confirms that he does, though he wonders to himself who that guy actually is. Kim comments that he thinks he's seen him a few times around the company, and Carl's confirms, saying he remembers that too. Our hero adds that even though he's the CEO, he doesn't want people to go easy on him because he plays fair. Suddenly, Kim's gaze turns serious and focused. A blast of energy scrapes past him, and he shouts in surprise at the sudden attack. Outraged, he asks why Carl's attacked him even after he asked for a fair fight and declares that he is not the CEO. The blonde insists that he's never seen the CEO since the interview and says Kim's lie is too obvious. With a glowing blue aura in his hand, Carl says he deeply respects the CEO and asks how Kim dares impersonate him. With conviction, the magic swordsman Carl states he will never forgive such an imposter. Faced with the doubt, Chunchik accepts that Carl doesn't believe him and proposes a good fight, since he hadn't planned to register in the game anyway. With sword in hand, Carl charges and Chunchik blocks the strike with his round shield. A strong blue energy gathers in Carl's hand as he prepares his next attack. He fires the energy, which crashes hard against Chunchik's shield. Feeling the pressure of the attack, Kim realizes it feels like he's fighting two people at once. Our hero imagines he'd have a real chance if Carl's weren't using that floating sword skill. Curious, Chunchik asks about the blue flying sword Carl's is using. He insists for Carl's to explain how he can use that skill, but the blonde remains silent. Firmly, the protagonist confirms that yes, he's referring to that very skill, the bluish floating sword. Without showing any intention of revealing, Carl's replies that there's no reason to tell him how to use the technique. Our hero compliments him, saying the skill is really cool and that Carl's is stronger than he looked. Suddenly, two identical blue floating swords appear beside Carl's, leaving Kim surprised. Carl's asks what he thinks of that and then launches both swords toward his opponent. Chunchik wonders if it's possible to use two swords at the same time, but notices they seem weaker like that. Even so, Kim comments that the skill is increasingly impressive and asks if Carl's could teach it. Proudly, Carl's replies that it's a special skill that requires mana, and that regular swordsmen can't use it. Our hero asks how to use mana, and Carl's replies, obviously with potions or buffs, before attacking him again. Carl's shouts for Kim to stop spouting nonsense in the middle of a fight. The blow hits Kim's shield squarely, and Carl's comments that although he's useless, he admires his persistence. Reflecting, Carl's acknowledges the pride Kim feels for the company and the CEO. He admits that Kim's passion and technique are admirable, and that he actually likes it. Arrogantly, Carl says that for someone elite like Kim, that's nothing, but he recognizes that Kim has good instincts, even as an imposter. Drinking a blue potion, Chunchik asks Carl to show an even more impressive skill, like a finishing move. Carl accepts the challenge with a smile and summons the powerful 5-chamber sword. With a dark expression, he promises to finish Kim in a special way using his deadliest strike. 5 blue swords fly at high speed toward Chunchik, who braces for the impact. The screen flashes white for a moment from the intensity of the incoming attack. Carl is shocked to realize his mana ran out in the middle of the ultimate move. Right in front of him, Chunchik appears with eyes glowing intensely. Grabbing Carl by the head, the protagonist says he knows how flashy, powerful skills carry great risks. With a smile, Kim says he had hoped Carl was on his level, and that he still hasn't mastered the technique. Our hero comments that guys like Carl are weak to compliments and slams him hard to the ground. Kim says that when he said he liked him, he was telling the truth, and Carl is left confused by the statement. Remembering the friend he met on the bench during the interview, Kim sees President Song smiling. With his hand glowing red, he wonders if he should try using the skill Karons showed him. Drawing the image of the Supreme Third Sword in his mind, he focuses his power. Activating the Champion's Sword, he prepares to strike the fallen Karons. A beam of red light slices through the air at high speed toward the enemy. Karons remains confused, unable to grasp what just happened with such a quick attack. The word defeat appears on the screen, and Chunshik wonders what just happened. The other members of the protagonist's team are also defeated in the simultaneous fights. A hand tightly clutches the stone floor. The word victory appears, and the shooter raises the golden scarab in celebration. Sitting atop the defeated Karons, he wonders what really happened in that battle. The spirit of the Deer Horn tribe congratulates the adventurers, saying the scarab now belongs to them. Excited, the sorceress Yunha celebrates her team's victory in the dungeon. In a confused tone, the frog Mamita on Kim's shoulder says that was the end, and the tribe took the scarab. Chunshik's eyes fixate as the name Flame Champion echoes. Looking at his companions, Psychidox, Zeroth, and the Spirit of Battle, he asks if everything really ends like that, so unexpectedly. With a frustrated sigh, the elf says that in the end, they lost the dungeon match. The scene then shifts to the dungeon exit, revealing a landscape of forest and mountains. At the campsite outside, the old man, Bron Jones, waits patiently. Mamita lands on Bron's hat, saying everyone has returned, and the old man joyfully recognizes him. Chunshik's group appears, and Bron happily comments that everyone is safe. Rond asks if they got the golden scarab, and Kim hesitates before answering. Explaining everything, Mameta says the scarab was taken by the Deer Horn tribe, and Bron laments the waste. The lizard Kissy No. 2 returns the exploration kit, and Bron says they'll have to give up on the scarab this time. Psychidox and Zeroth comment that the ending was kind of lame since it was just a low-level dungeon. The elf asks the Flame Champion if he's taking the loss too seriously, and says they'll still receive rewards. Psychidox declares she can't leave things like that, and Kim is surprised by her reaction. Reflecting, the protagonist admits he acted without thinking and lost for nothing. Acknowledging his mistake, he says he learned a lot from the event and now needs to play more wisely. With conviction, Kim declares that from now on, the word loser no longer exists in his dictionary. The scene changes to a tavern where the shooter is enjoying a roasted chicken, and Yuna screams, thinking he had died. Curious, the sorceress asks how he managed to climb up there, and he explains the game only ends once you get the golden scarab. Yuna finds Karl's expression strange and asks what's wrong with him even though he won. With a serious sweating face, Karl's wonders if that person was really the CEO, remembering the interview. Desperate, he screams, clutching his head, saying he doesn't even want to think about it. Observant, Mint recognizes the men from the black market and asks what they're doing there. Looking at a post, she sees a wanted poster with Kissy No. 2's photo, put up by the Black Market Guild. The scene shifts to the imposing headquarters of Novus Company. A well-dressed man is described as elegant and excellent at his job. Oh Sung-tak from the support team greets Miss Hai Jeon and the director politely. Remembering his encounter with Chunshik in the game, he wonders if he really is the CEO. 2 female employees chat about a business meeting and the CEO's career path. One of them mentions he called an emergency meeting to discuss the feedback they received. The other says he never cared about the development team and wonders what made him suddenly change. While listening, Oh Sung-tak thinks the CEO really seems to be playing the game now, with this sudden new interest. Nearby, Secretary Jung approaches, calling for Mr. CEO. Without delay, our hero turns and asks what's going on with Secretary John. She replies saying it's not necessary for him to push himself so hard since she handles the work. Even so, Chunshik prefers to speak in person and see how the work is being done. He finds it ironic not to know much about the game that made the company grow, and Jong believes that's because he's always only handled the management side. Kim responds that maybe it's true, but now that he's played, he understands things better. With his back turned, the protagonist begins talking about how the company's game works and the problems he sees. Confidently, Chunshik smiles, saying he still has a lot to learn to improve. Moved, Joan watches the CEO's effort inside the game. Chunshik comments that maybe he needs to level up faster, or he'll never reach first place within a year, leaving John confused. He says he'll handle it alone and asks John not to interfere, but she insists on helping him. Before continuing, Chunshik changes the subject to talk about his next appointment. The scene then shifts to a large house at night. A small dog appears, barking happily. Petting the puppy, Chunshik asks how Poppy is feeling. In front of a family photo, someone asks if the sister has arrived yet. Soon after, Kim asks where his brother is. Our hero notices something in the darkness. In front of several monitors, someone is playing in the dark. Silently, the protagonist continues watching the figure in the shadows. In the room, Chunshik holds a virtual reality helmet. With determination, he puts it on his head. Lights power on in the helmet's visor. The system displays a message saying Fiery Champion has connected. In-game, Chunshik appears at level 29 with Kissy number 2 on his shoulder, laughing and asking how the boy is doing. Inside the game, he looks surprised. Sikadox appears and comments that he's a bit late, and he calls her Miss Jamin. Curious, Chunshik asks where Mr. Fighting Spirit and Jeros are, and the elf explains that they left earlier. Kim asks what today's task is and if they'll face a dungeon, but she says no, their level is already high. She suggests hunting in the field to level up and reminds him that the battle royal is in 3 days, which makes our hero agree. The scene shifts to the Nagram Plains. A gigantic stone monster appears, roaring with glowing eyes. Brutally, the monster attacks. With an agile leap, the protagonist dodges the strike. A knight in armor quickly charges to attack. The blow lands directly on the monster's green gem. Alongside Kissy number 2, Chunshik watches the monster while Psychodox calls him Fiery Champion. With a confident smile, our hero asks if it looks like he's fighting now and says that should be enough. The elf offers a potion to Kim, asking if he's been thinking about getting stronger. She reveals it's RMT, and the protagonist reacts by asking her not to say that word or he'll lose his temper. Looking him straight in the eye, she asks why he doesn't use RMT since he has money, and if his goal is to become a ranker without it, like Kim Chunshik. Chunshik responds with a laugh, saying he already said he won't use money in the game. She says he wants to be a ranker and asks to say one thing. Psychodox states that without RMT he won't achieve that goal, and Kim looks surprised. The girl explains that to be a ranker, you need to do raids and increase karma, and for that, you need good items and money. Firmly, she asks if he really thinks he'll get a good item just by playing without spending. In a serious tone, she says there are other ways to become a ranker by increasing karma without raids, but that requires a good item. Chunshik asks if the good item is the execution sword he got, and then remembers that yes, it's that sword. Psychodox confirms that of course the execution sword is good, but it can only be used at max level, and he's still far from that. Smiling mischievously, the elf thinks that the item will be hers once he logs out of the game. Curious, Chunshik asks why Miss Jamin doesn't use RMT, and the elf looks surprised. She explains that this is her second account and the first one did use RMT, so Kim asks if she got strong thanks to the money she spent. With conviction, Psychodox says yes, that on the first account she won raids thanks to RMT. Suddenly she stops, bothered by something strange. Chunshik watches, confused. With laughter, the elf says it was something like that, and he asks if there was some problem in the past, just in case. The blonde just laughs and says it was nothing. Unexpectedly, Psychodox screams in shock. Worried, Chunshik asks what's wrong with Miss Jamin and what's happening. The system displays a message saying Miss Jaminx has logged out of the game, and Kim asks if she really left just like that, without saying anything. Silently, Chunshik stares ahead when someone speaks, saying they were right. It's the same person he saw before. The demon girl Red Pit Buell appears, asking if he remembers her and if he is Kim Chunshik. Immediately, our hero recognizes her as the reporter. Red Pit Buell laughs, saying she knew he would remember. She states that the item is the same one the guild master uses, while Kissy number 2 looks confused. Holding a wanted poster, she shows it to Kissy number 2, saying it's something a little unusual. With a terrifying smile, the demon waifu declares that he has to die. A headset falls to the ground. A male voice calls for Song Jamin, asking if he's sleeping and saying he's playing again. Frightened, the boy apologizes, saying he was just about to log off. The man responds that he doesn't want him to stop playing, just not in front of him. Jamin thinks that when his father drinks, he should pretend to be asleep. Angrily, the father asks if he's not listening, and Jamin becomes tense. He says he'll have to beat him to make him learn and tells him to fetch the stick, terrifying him even more. In the dark hallway, the boy complains that everything hurts. Chunshik's eyes show pain. He wonders what happened. Waking up confused, Chunshik looks around. He tries to understand where he is. Inside a wooden room with barrels, the hero finds himself. As he turns around, he hears a voice saying he's awake. Nyingshik, the cat, appears, shouting meow sick. Chunshik asks what's going on, and the cat says he knew something like this would happen. Tied up, Ken realizes the situation and shouts, asking what's happening and why he's tied up. Nyingshik asks if he was trying to tame the red burn he caught, and Kim doesn't understand. Tied back to back, Secretary Jung appears. With a frustrated sigh, she reacts. Our hero asks why she's there, and she says, Mr. CEO, that's why. Jung decides to explain how it all happened. In a flashback, she says she was helping the CEO as always, and he asks if she was following him. She says that's not the important part and asks him to let her finish, which he agrees to. She narrates how she saw the CEO being attacked by the Red Demon. As his personal secretary, she tried to protect him even without weapons and even used a hammer. In the end, she admits her abilities weren't enough, and she ended up getting captured as expected. Feeling guilty for being weak and not protecting the CEO, she asks who the woman that attacked them was. The Red Demon. Nyingshik explains that the Red Demon isn't a person but a guild specialized in PK. He goes on to say the Red Demon and the black market made a mutual aid contract, and that's why he was captured. Chunshik asks if they're in the black market, where those cats were, and the cat confirms technically. Confused, Kim tries to understand. Jong clarifies that they're inside a black market transport ship. Chunshik wants to know why he was captured if there was an agreement to deliver Poppy number 2, and starts to wonder where the punk is. An idea hits him, and he's shocked. Nyingshik says that's exactly why, and that he didn't expect the one he was sent to retrieve would be tamed. Pardonably, Jong asks Nyingshik if he knows where that transport is headed. The cat replies that it's obvious. Shocked, she says Queen Bee, and Chunshik asks if she knows something. She explains that the Queen Bee Guild is the most powerful on the continent and controls most of the land. Nyingshik calls her an idiot, and she repeats the word angrily. Chunshik wants to know what being captured has to do with going there. The cat reveals that Queen Bee also has a contract with the black market and that they will be sold as slaves. He adds that the black market also traffics and rents monsters and slaves. Chunshik asks if Nangshik is included in that, and the cat says that although they're not the same, there are similar cases. Angrily, Chunshik says that's really unfair. John comments that everyone is equal in the game and that it's hard to grasp the idea of being a slave or sold, and decides to log out. The cat replies that everyone is equal, yes. He warns that logging out won't solve the problem, and that even outside, she'd have to come back later. He adds that it'd be easier to delete the character and create a new one, but everyone would think that's a waste. Chunshik asks if there's nothing they can do while they're there, and Nyingshik confirms there isn't. Thinking he might be about to die, Chunshik wonders how this is happening in his own game. Furious, he thinks he should do something because of those brats. Determined, Chunshik tells Secretary John to schedule a meeting for the next day, saying he can't let this go anymore, and she agrees. A larger cat appears, calling out to those present. Main the Mioscot tells everyone to follow him because Hyungnim is calling. On the way aboard the flying ship, Chunshik comments that they're flying and how large that transport line is. Miang informs them that they've arrived. Before them, the figure pointed out by Miang is recognized as the one who didn't pay and took Red Burn, possibly the infamous fiery champion. Wearing an eye patch, the cat boss asks if Red Burn is intact while Chunshik calls him a punk. Not hiding his grudge, the boss demands to know if he understands how much everyone suffered and announces that he placed a bounty on his head along with the Red Demon. He reveals that he paid a fortune for the force-taming potion. Inside a cage, Kissy number 2 appears trapped. One of the cats turns to the boss, asking what they should do with the two of them. The order comes quickly when the boss tells Nyingshik to take the cat food to the Bee Queen. Wanting to understand better, Jong asks who he is. According to the boss, the Red Demon explained that she was only taken along somehow, and now, thinking it over, she's like a bonus. He then decides that Jong will be taken to the western continent where she'll be released, believing she'll manage on her own. With a serious face, the boss turns to Mr. Fiery Champion. Tension rises between Chunshik and Jong. The BMG Guild Master, known as Miang and rank 34, wonders what would be interesting to do with them. The demon girl says she resolved the black market issue without trouble and also found someone. Curious, the guild master confirms that one task was completed and asks if she found Kim Chunshik, and she admits she's not sure. A mysterious figure comments that the Demon King asks every day when she'll find him and wonders if Kim Chunshik even plays the game. According to her, it doesn't matter what it is as long as the commission job is done. Red Pit Biola promises to do her best and says she saw a lizard just like Mr. Gilma's. With interest, the Demon King, sitting in an armchair petting the lizard on his lap, says that sounds interesting. The transport ship cuts through the skies at high speed. Chunshik is filled with surprise. Miang laughs and asks if he wasn't just a cat mocking his innocence. He explains that to do business, you have to be cute, and building an image is part of it. Our hero counters that if he keeps acting like this, he'll be punished one day. Mockingly, Miang asks what he could possibly do. The villain taunts him, asking if Chunshik's aura hasn't changed. He says he used to look more like a boomer. Casually, Miang says he'll let him go if he pays the principal and the interest. Until then, he suggests everyone will suffer a bit. The order comes directly when Miang tells Nyingshik not to do anything stupid until they reach the Bee Queen. He warns that it's best to stay quiet if they want to survive. He orders them to take the punks to the dungeon, and the cat obeys. With a hungry look, the huge black cat licks its lips. The cat boss says he's prepared a fun event so the big guy doesn't get bored and should wait. The yellow cat hurries and tells everyone to get in quickly. He asks them to wait patiently because they'll be going up again soon. With a resigned sigh, Chunshik admits that they've been caught, and there's nothing they can do now. Jung tries to reassure the CEO, saying she'll notify the operations team. Kim interrupts her, and she wants to know why. He explains that if they act now, his identity will be revealed and everything will get more complicated. Our hero decides it's best to observe first and then eliminate everyone at once. Jung gets emotional, saying he acted like a boomer before but always cared. She praises him for being calm and composed, and he tells her to shut up. Shik calls him stupid and hesitantly suggests something. A prisoner yells that he's being transported. He says he's getting out of there and clings to the bars. A warrior woman screams that she's going to die, and that everyone else will die by her hands too. Chunshik wants to know if she was also captured and what's wrong with her, and Shik agrees. Shik falls silent. New shadowy figures appear imprisoned, and he comments that there are more people there. The warrior woman screams at one of the cats and threatens to rip out his teeth and kill him. One of the masked prisoners asks Panya to stop because if she keeps going, everyone will lose. He turns to the new prisoners and wants to know how they got there. Suspicious, he asks if they're also in debt with the black market. Our hero replies that not exactly, but it's better to leave it at that. The masked man finds the answer rude but still wants to know their classes. Chunshik says he uses a sword and is praised as a swordsman. Shik says he's a weapon specialist and also receives praise. Jung says she's an archer, and the masked man just comments. With a grumble, the masked man says he knew he'd have bad luck, and Panya claims that ranged archers are cowards. He introduces himself as Mus7 Machil and reveals that they are from the Malay Union Guild. Chunshik looks confused and asks what they did to end up there. Machil explains it's a long story and starts telling how the guild ended up that way. He says they were always excluded and mocked for not dealing enough damage. Even so, they kept going because they enjoyed close combat. That's why they founded a guild to fight against the unfair treatment of the Malay Union Guild. With little money for raids, the black market titles caught their attention. Chunshik asks if they took money and got dragged here for not paying and calls them stupid. Machil admits they did and says if they had known beforehand, they wouldn't have done it. Jung wants to know why Panya talks like that. Machil replies that they don't need to explain anything to a dirty dealer, and Panya agrees. Chunshik says they're overreacting and asks where she's from, and she yells that she's from Russia. He remembers that many foreigners play because Nova's World became a global craze. Chunshik asks if there aren't many people in their guild, and Machil says the others are in another prison. He says that if they log in again, they'll end up back there. Chunshik wants to know if it's really impossible to escape, even by logging out, and says no one should stay there forever. He suggests they think of a way to get out and says that if Nis Jamin were there, things would be different. A shout from the yellow cat orders everyone to come out. With a smile on his face, the cat appears and says it's time to have some fun. Another cat asks Deshik who he's betting on today, and he answers drunk. A third cat asks why he doesn't bet the opposite since the odds are high, but gets no response. Pushed along, the prisoners follow while Chunshik complains about how they're treated. They arrive at an arena, and Chunshik wants to know what that is. Machil looks terrified. He shouts that those people are from his guild, and Kim is surprised. One of the cats informs the boss that everything is ready, and he confirms. With a grin, the boss cat says to bring it. The sound of a massive gate opening echoes. The boss orders them to fight and promises to free everyone if they defeat Grunk. The crowd of cats cheers excitedly. One of them shouts for them to kill Grunk, and our hero wonders what that thing is. The yellow cat laughs, saying that if they fight and win, they'll be released. He reveals that this will be their fate. A giant owl faces players inside a monster betting game arena. Monster betting is a black market game where players are imprisoned and monsters are unleashed on them. The black market captures rare monsters and uses them for this type of combat. Even though it's a gambling game, the system is treated as monster hunting, which hides its illegality. Indebted players are forced to fight, which makes everything unethical. Chunshik is speechless at the revelation. He asks if there really is a monster like Grunk. The boss cat says it would be sad if the kids died there. The audience celebrates, saying Grunk won and that they always trusted him. The monster Grunk glares at the arena before leaving. As two small cats observe Grunk, Chunshik explodes with rage, asking what they're doing and if they force people to fight for money. He wants to know the reason behind these fights and says it's no different from dogfighting. The yellow cat calls him a dog too and says that people who take money and don't pay are dogs. Kim yells that he never took money and that they were tricked by scammers. In pain, a guy collapsed on the ground groans. One of the cats asks if he has nothing to say after losing. With a regretful tone, the boss cat says it's a shame. If they had won, they'd be free by now. The guy receives the prison sentence, and a cat carries it out without hesitation. Calling out in concern, Machil tries to reach Woojin. With intense rage, Chunshik's eyes glow. The clenched fist of a player appears in the scene with visible force. The intent to strike the boss cat is clear, and the player says he's going to die. Shock takes over Chunshik's and Michelle's group as they stare fixedly at something. Fool is how the boss cat refers to the player in front of him. As footsteps approach, the cat watches and says he crawls like a dead rat. With overwhelming presence, a massive werewolf appears and says he doesn't understand this eagerness to die. Panya and Michelle's desperation is expressed in screams for Woojin. The werewolf's gaze turns toward the prisoners inside the cell. The idea of teaching them a lesson seems appealing to him. With a leap, he lands in front of the cell. With a smirk, he provokes them and asks what will happen if he loses his patience. Tension rises as the werewolf stares down the prisoners, and Chunshik questions his intentions. He approaches slowly and asks the fiery champion if he should show them something fun. The yellow cat gives the order to begin preparations, and a water-breathing potion is handed to the cats. The werewolf's strength forces Michelle to drink the potion while he declares that whoever crawls on their own. The claw opens, and the player is dropped into the void to the sound of Michelle's scream. The scream intensifies as the player is launched upward. He plunges into the sea and the werewolf laughs, saying he'll survive down there. The laughter continues with the declaration that it never gets old, while Michelle keeps calling for Woojin. The villain keeps taunting, asking if Chunshik is mad and threatening to do it all again if he logs out and logs back in. Dark smoke begins to fill the area. With authority, the cat boss warns them not to disobey him and to do exactly as he says. He gives the firm order for Kwakba to prepare for the next game and the participants to be used. The choice falls on 4 members of the Melee Union Guild. In the next battle, the fiery champion will face everything alone, and Kim shows surprise. Meanwhile, Chunshik is to be kept imprisoned until the game ends, and only then will he be brought out. To our hero, the boss promises a grand fight and asks him not to log out, because that wouldn't be any fun. From the cell window, the protagonist silently watches the outside. The urgent thought crosses his mind that there's no time and that escaping alone will be impossible. Joan apologizes for not being able to help, and he reassures her, saying it's not her fault. With irony, Chunshik comments on how fraud, gameplay, and kidnapping are all happening in that game. Nova's world is described by Nyangshik as a virtual reality game where anything is possible. The game's quality is praised, and Chunshik asks if it really is that good. It's his first time playing something so real, and upon hearing that, Nyangshik tells him to stop pretending. The name Kim Chunshik is called out by the cat, and he and John are startled. The denial of being the CEO comes immediately, but the cat says he already knows everything. According to him, only foolish secretaries and CEOs don't know when to speak openly, as John stands awkwardly. The secret wasn't meant to be revealed to the outside world, and the cat agrees with that. A promise of help comes from Nyangshik, leaving Kim surprised. The final bet is made by him as he hands over a potion that temporarily boosts the level to 100, saying it's better than nothing. The thanks come as he takes the potion, followed by the cat's call for someone. Other cats enter the cell and inform him that it's his turn. The protagonist calms John, saying she knows him and he won't die. Nyangshik tells him to stay calm and says he'll be with him soon. The cat host criticizes the previous battle, saying everyone was defeated by Grunk in 5 minutes. This time, the announcement is that the next game will be different and surprising for those watching Monster Bets. A newbie below level 30 appears as a solo player and is called the Fiery Champion. The comment follows that a monster too strong against a newbie leads to a predictable result, and they're told to get ready. The entrance of a giant white rabbit into the arena causes an uproar. Cats in the audience complain, saying they expected a strong monster. In disbelief, Chunshik asks if they really want him to fight a rabbit, as the animal shows massive teeth. The host corrects him, saying it's the monster killer rabbit. The hero wonders if it's a crocodile rabbit and not a petting zoo. A cat questions the boss if it's not too cruel to put that monster against a newbie. The glow in Rabbit's eyes signals something terrible. As it roars, the monster killer rabbit leaves Chunshik confused, wondering what that thing is. With a single strike, the rabbit's head is sliced off by the protagonist. 2 cats in the audience express shock at the event. The game boss watches in complete silence. The stunned announcer asks what that was. The confirmation comes. The fiery champion cut the rabbit's neck with a single blow. The hero wonders if that was too easy and whether it really felt like a boss. Chunshik shouts, asking if the cats are happy now that he won, and demands his freedom. The headless body rises, and the eye patch wearing cat snaps back, asking what he's talking about. With force, the monster stomps the ground. The headless rabbit stands behind Chunshik, saying the game isn't over yet. A powerful punch hits Kim, who grunts in pain. The flame champion's fall seems imminent, according to the announcer, who questions if it's his first time. The explanation is that the killer rabbit only reveals its true form when threatened and is incredibly resilient. The secretary yells that she wants to fight too, to protect the flame champion. The cat asks if she didn't say she was his secretary. It would be smarter not to draw attention, not even for a CEO, he says. John replies that she can't just stand by. The cat clarifies that he never said no one would do anything, and her surprise is visible. Using his claws, Shik announces he's getting out of there. A guard scolds him for not staying quiet. With a piece of wood, he silences the guard with a precise blow. Jung asks how he managed to do that. Shik answers that a cat can get through anywhere if its head fits. Jung wants to know if he got caught on purpose and why he didn't escape earlier. He explains the resignation that he can get out of there, but not escape them completely, so he gave up. Even so, he decided to help that idiot because he believes he can change his fate and says this will be the last time he saves him. The secretary asks that the door be opened so she can go too. The armed cat warns her not to move or make a sound. Climbing the stairs, Shik promises he'll be back soon. The fight continues, and the killer rabbit charges at Chunshik. The monster regenerates from the hit it took. Attacking randomly isn't effective, and it seems difficult to do damage. The hero is still wondering what the hell that thing is. Even with several cuts, the monster rises and attacks again, and he starts trying to find the weak spot. Angrily, the killer rabbit roars. A sequence of stomps slams down on Chunshik. The intense glow in the rabbit's muscles catches attention. The hero still doesn't understand what it is. To protect himself, he uses his shield ability. With force, the rabbit grabs his leg. A single blow launches him far away. The impact on the ground is brutal, and the announcer comments that he doesn't know how to fight the rabbit. The accusations continue, saying he's a coward because of it. Panting, the hero appears trying to get back up. The memory of an elf brings the explanation that to beat a mob, you have to hit its weak point. No monster is without a weakness, she says. In the underground cave of Agar, she asks if he wants to get the slime. The slime monster appears, and Chunshik says it's easy. The incomparable sword, no. One is used, and Zeroth asks if she's okay. The hero complains to the blonde elf that the slime won't die. The explanation is that the slime only dies if its weak spot is hit. With precision, the elf throws a dagger that hits the exact point. The strike is spot on, and the slime is hit hard. Psychodox points out that the slime's eyes glow as it regenerates, and that's the sign. Discovering the pattern and weaknesses is the key, and the player asks for help. Back in the arena, memory leads Chunshik to think that every monster has a weakness. The options running through his mind are neck, head, or heart. The killer rabbit continues its advance, and Chunshik is still down. The crowd wonders if he's even alive. The announcer's voice declares the end, but suddenly cuts off. On the monster's back, Chunshik appears. Angrily, the protagonist strikes repeatedly, shouting for it to die. The ground shakes from the rabbit's stomp. The wound begins to heal with impressive speed. Thrown far, Chunshik is struck hard by the killer rabbit. The hero realizes the right foot is the secret. When it stomps, it regenerates. As the monster screams in fury and charges, he decides to act. With determination, the hero draws the incomparable sword No. 2. The rabbit's Achilles tendon is the target of the final strike. A deep cut opens in the killer rabbit's tendon. Ready for the battle's conclusion, Kim raises his sword. In the next moment, the protagonist lunges into the air toward the final blow. The blade hits the rabbit's head with precision. Defeated, the killer rabbit collapses, powerless. Sitting atop the fallen body, Chunshik breathes deeply after the decisive strike. With wide eyes, the cats in the audience try to understand what just happened. Also shocked are other cats watching the scene. Without hiding the tension, the announcer declares the Flame Champion's victory, and shouts of protest erupt. Amid the noise, someone questions if the whole thing was staged, and Chunshik provokes the boss with a question about what he thought. The boss cat compliments him, saying he's really good, and then asks where. Before he can answer, a cat rushes over in a panic, warning that Kyung-nim is in danger. Surprised, the boss demands to know the reason for the panic and threatens to get angry. On the deck, a cat is thrown far by a horned monster. In a coordinated attack, several monsters invade the ship, and the cats scream for help. Dressed in shining armor, Shik appears, saying he caused all this mess by releasing the monsters. With a loud roar, a gigantic griffin attacks while a cat cries out for help. Terrified, Yang orders not to kill the monsters, only to control them because they're valuable. Suddenly, a colossal dragon appears and sends him flying with ease. Atop the creature, Shik balances himself and warns everyone to be careful. Stomping hard, an animal-like figure lands with impact on the deck. Faced with the scene, the armored cat doesn't hide his shock. With a devastating strike, the werewolf hits the dragon. Amid the chaos, the villain is impressed and wonders if they should just watch. Without hesitation, the werewolf demands to know how he plans to handle the consequences and states that debts must be paid. Confident, Shik replies that he already has everything under control with a plan in mind. In response, the werewolf shows skepticism and says he'd like to hear the details. Meanwhile, Kim watches the cats running through the cell area, trying to make sense of the situation. From atop the fallen rabbit's body, he shouts his victory, demanding to be set free. Surprised, our hero hears someone call him the Flame Champion. The Malay Union Guild shows up and announces they've come to rescue him. Still confused, Chunshik asks about all the chaos, and Mitchell promises to explain everything along the way. Pointing ahead, a blonde warrior spots someone and shouts, "Captain there, making Machel's eyes widen. Black market cats appear, blocking the escape and asking where they think they're going. Without hesitation, the blonde warrior steps forward and orders them to take the hero another way, which Machel approves. She calls for Panya to come with her, and the response is immediate. As they run, Machel comments that it's a long story, and Panya screams amid the chaos. They had lost the match and were taken to a basement packed with monsters. In the middle of the commotion, Nyingshik suddenly appeared and began breaking open all the cages. With desperate screams, the guard cats call for help as the disorder among the monsters escalates.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.